Great. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Board of Selectmen meeting, June 22nd, 2021. Feedback. At bear with us 1 second, please. Okay. Sorry. At 6:30, call the meeting to order at 6:31. First item on the agenda is public comment. Just for clarification, the meeting tonight is only being viewed live on YouTube. There is no participation through the virtual viewing. So public comment. Going once.
Does that be related to your agenda?
No.
Betsy Rose.
Oh, come on up, have a seat.
Oh.
So Betsy, all you need to do is before you talk is hit the space bar, and Jay can make sure that you do it, and then mute and unmute. So just say name, address, and look forward to your comment. You're all set. Go ahead.
Hi, Betsy Rosamond, 5 Strawberry Hill Road. I was just wondering if you could tell us if we're going to get painted crosswalks on Main Street. And 85 south and north of Main Street.
And I'm sure Mr. Purple can correct me if if I'm wrong. Yes, and there's supposed to be, there's some, what was approved by the working group, proposed by DPW, recommended to town meeting and signed off on by town meeting was higher end crosswalks as well. The texture is going to be different. My understanding is, I don't know what the timetable is, but my understanding is that it's going to be part of the final dotting of I's and crossing T's for this summer's construction season. I don't know if it has to wait until the new fiscal year or not, but that's what was recommended, approved, and is, as far as I know, in process.
Thank you, Mr. Healy.
Thank you, Ms. Rosenblum. Any other public comment? Chris, if you come up to the table here.
I have it.
Nope, and you're fine. And when you speak, just hit the space bar, well, if you don't mind, Jay. He'll help you out with that. And just say your name and address for the record. And thank you.
A little wet out there. Well, good evening on this wet night. Well, I'm here as just a resident, even though I'm on the EDC, and this just will take about 2 minutes. 2 words to keep in mind tonight as we discuss areas around the EDC situation. 2 words: remarkable and legacy. And this is, I've got just about 2 sentences here, but I'm going to introduce a little humor to make a point. And it is 12 years ago, I was diagnosed with terminal cancer. It was I was in stage 4, and I went through 6 months of heavy duty radiation, chemo, and I couldn't eat because the radiation shut down my ability to eat. And I was on a liquid diet, and I guess if you could say the best thing that happened, I lost 40 pounds. I don't recommend to anybody going that route, but it works. And my wife and I went into the final meeting where they did a battery of tests, blood tests, and the x-ray test, which was from here up, covering my brain, my head, to see if there was any residual effects. And we were obviously nervous as could be. And he said, "I'm happy to tell you, Chris, that we found nothing remarkable." My wife jumps in and says, "Heck, I could have told you that." I look at my wife and I said, "Where's the support?" And she's an engineer type, and I've never heard her sense of humor. And I keep asking her, "Did you really mean that?" But the point I'm making is, not the point, But what I found interesting, the doctor used the word remarkable. And they used the word remarkable in lieu of saying something terribly negative, like you have cancer cells still in you and it looks terminal. And instead, he was prepared to say, you have something remarkable that we have to treat. And I'm saying we're at a pivotal point in reference to the downtown in our history. We have been working on this project for years now. And we're at a pivotal point to make what I would say and hope, those of you who are listening, and in the back of the room, is this a most remarkable hour? And is this going to be about a legacy we've decided to make for this town? We can no longer delay, stop, or without working out details, if we put our full effort into it, to enable this to happen. As you know, we have towns all around us that have set a standard for revitalizing their community. And Southborough, I think, is in last place in doing this. But we're at a time we're at a pivotal time in this race to go modern and bring the best of what we know and how we can do to say this was a most remarkable hour and this is a legacy we can be proud of. So we can fight about the details in the back room, but collaboration has got to be key, and that I have all the confidence in this board and the other committees that we can go to town meeting with a unanimous roll call and a proud moment to say this was their most remarkable hour and a legacy we can all be proud of. And I thank you for that moment.
Yes, Paul, just press the space bar and name and address.
Okay, Paul Sabino, 3 Austin Kelly Lane. I'll start with a question, and depending on the answer, I may have a comment, which is you have an item on your agenda much further down to discuss the appointment of town special and labor counsel. And my question is, at that time, will there be an opportunity for the public to speak about that particular agenda item or not? I don't know if you have an intention one way or another in that regard.
So I think process-wise, Paul, this might be a good opportunity for you to take before we actually get into deliberation and discussion from the board.
Okay, in that case, then I'll just be very brief and say that I have attended, by the way, these are my personal opinions, not sitting here as the moderator. I attended both sessions where council were here for interviews, observed all of them. I have mentioned before that I take the board at its word and seriously when they initiated this process with the view to see what else might be out there in terms of council coverage for us, et cetera, as a town. It occurs to me, again, my personal opinion, that absent a sort of a compelling difference between current council and one of the others, it seems a little bit incongruous to make a change absent something compelling like that. And my personal opinion was again, it's not up to me, but I didn't see that. I didn't hear it. And I would assume then if a change is made, there would be some good substantive reasons articulated for that. So that's the comment I would make about the process and your deliberations later. I know you're recused, Andrew, but thank you for nodding. That's it. Appreciate the time.
All right, Paul, thank you very much for the comments. Much appreciated. Any other public comment? Okay, that being said, number 3, A, Brian Ballantyne and Carla McCullough contract award for town auditor effective July 1st, 2021. I give you the computer.
Good evening. Hope everyone is well. So I think the board has been aware that our contract for our auditor, Bill Freyer, was up and expires technically June 30th, so very soon. We did send out an RFQ and got 4 responses, as you see in my memo. We decided to look through the material and decided to interview all 4 firms. All 4 firms did have experience in Massachusetts, various levels of staffing, somewhat different approaches firm to firm. We narrowed it quickly down to 2 based on what we think would be best for Southborough. And after a brief further follow-up and conversation, it appeared that we were in agreement that Rosselli, Clark and Associates was, our top pick. Our budget for this year was 42,000, a little over 42,000. Obviously, by the chart, you can see they're at 27. So financially, we're well within the amounts that was allotted at town meeting. You can also see where they met all the RFQ levels of experience and ranked it advantageous in those particular areas. Part of it was the interview process. We did do our interviews. 3 of the 4 were Zoom. 1 was actually in person, which was nice. But unfortunately, just due to logistics, the other 3 couldn't make it in person. But it was well worth it to talk one-on-one and go back and forth on their philosophies and some of the questions we had for them and find out kind of what they thought, someone like Southborough the type of attention we should get. So again, I think Rosselli will do good. It's a 3-year contract. So like anything else, if they do not do good, we will revisit in 3 years and make the appropriate changes if we have to. But they have a pretty good reputation. And from talking with the partner, I think we'll be well served by that firm. So if there's any questions, happy to answer.
Great, thank you. So I'll just thank you for the level of detail you provided. It's good to see that they were well within the range of what we were looking for. I just have one question. Was there anything or one thing specific that put them above the others in your mind?
You and me. I particularly liked, at least from my point, I can't speak for Carla or anyone else, but I particularly liked the flexibility that they were willing to give the town. They seem to have a good balance of, they have the ability to have portals where you can submit data and information electronically if need be. But on the other hand, it was clear they're willing to be on site as much as the town wants. And it's pretty much, if I understand correctly, it was pretty much our decision to how much we really want to have them here, and how much we want to use that sort of remote approach. So we'll try to balance that out as we go along. But that's kind of what I liked. And some of his answers, in particular on the interview questions, I thought were really spot on. He was the only one who answered the most major issue going on in the industry right now. And he said it's my age. And he's right. There's no young people going into this business anymore. Kind of across the municipal, it kind of crosses all the municipal areas. So I thought that was perceptive. So that would be my answer. I don't know if you have anything to add or.
No, not necessarily. I did feel, so I guess, yes. Okay. I can't be up here and not add something. I just felt as a first year audit client, it was important to have someone here, and just to build the relationships and meet the people. And we sort of asked, well, how do you pick, where you focus and how, and all the answers were spot on. It was what we were looking for. It was what we were comfortable with. And he has a good position and reputation within the Northeast. And, you know, we decided that we would like to work with them.
We'll just go down the line. So Ms. Malinowski, if you have anything, question, comment?
Do you have a sense of when our first opportunity will be to meet them?
As far as the board goes,
Yes.
the board meeting them. I'm sure they would be flexible with that. I don't think we specifically asked that. We more concentrated on the presentation to the boards and how they did it in other towns and everything. But I have no problem with having the board introduce themselves to this firm at any time. And I don't think they either. So very flexible. We can, I can work with Mr. Purple on that.
Thank you. Mr. Healy.
Recommendation seems fine. Materials you put together for us were, I don't want to say persuasive, but they gave me the ability to decide whether or not to go with your recommendation. I think it's a good one.
Thanks. As folks may know, I've actually been reading the audit reports we've been getting over the years, riveting reading certainly. And I also looked at some of the audit reports that this group has done for other town clients. And I was very impressed with the breadth of the issues they considered and suggestions that they made for their other town clients. And I think that'll be very helpful. I think that is a source that we've not been getting so much of from our previous auditor. I think this is very helpful to get a larger view of the world and issues and things we might want to consider in terms of the internal accounting process. So I think this is a great move and sounds like they are well qualified to do the job. Thanks.
And just to add on to that, Sam, you made a good point because I meant to mention that, is that during our conversation, this auditor was very willing to, in fact, he cautioned himself because he was very willing to give suggestions if we want. He realizes there's a line of, giving suggestions and maybe overstepping his what he feels comfortable with. But I like the idea of getting suggestions too, if certainly with that experience, I'd take them.
Great. Thank you, Brian. Andrew?
I'm comfortable with the recommendation that you've made, and I don't have any questions that haven't already been asked. Thank you.
All right. Do we have a motion to award the contract for town auditor effective July 1st, 2021 to Roselli, Clark and Associates?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All right. Show of hands vote, I guess. All in favor?
Arm goes up.
All opposed? Great. Thank you. And thank you both for coming and all the hard work that you did. Much appreciated. All right.
Lisa, is that the first time we've cast a vote like that in 16 months?
It is. I had to think about how I wanted to say a show of hands and yeah, so
It's all good.
it did. Next up, our IT update with Mr. I'm not going to do it. Montijo. Welcome, Jay. I know that you had sent us some things you wanted to go over, so the floor is yours.
So good evening. Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the board. So just wanted to give you guys like a high level overview of what's been going on. A lot's been going on. There's hasn't been really a day of ease in the IT department, as you can tell by the $7 million that we've all been awarded recently. Just an update right now on the Board of Health on items that I've been working on. A couple of you have actually seen some of this, so it's going to be a duplicate for you. We did get a new multifunction printer for the Board of Health. It got installed today, yay. And so I have a couple of things to tweak out for that and to get them going, and we'll do some training with them on that. It also includes paper cuts so that they're able to scan any of their items when they're printing something. So it falls under the HIPAA guidelines so that papers are just not sitting on the printer for them. They just scan a badge or put in their credentials and then release that job, and they'll have their print jobs there for them. Also, I gave access to the Board of Health and COVID site to Taylor so that she's able to make any changes on COVID-related items or Board of Health items so that she doesn't have to wait for anybody here to kind of make those changes, which has been good. I reached out to her and just double checked that everything's good. It's very, seamless as far as getting in there and making the changes. Email encryption, I did a little research to try to get them some email encryption in there, and we actually have the ability with our current Office 365 licenses that I just need to update a few changes for those particular users so that they're able to send emails encrypted to anybody outside of our building. It will pretty much just send them an email, one-time code, so they can access that email and release it in the encryption window. Again, it all falls under the guidelines for HIPAA and also government use as well. Had some notes, sorry guys, just going through them. Also, I talked to some eFax reps. I had some demos on how eFax can help all of us, not just the Board of Health, but also all the other departments that do use faxes currently. There are issues with the copper lines. So in the next year or so, they're not going to be supporting copper lines. So if your fax is down, Verizon or any company can just say, not my problem, which is kind of a tough situation we're in. But we, if we get this plan going and start some porting of numbers that are out there right now, we can get that pretty seamless over the next few weeks or so, hopefully, if everything goes as planned. And also got a couple of laptops, one for Taylor and Barbara as well, so that she's able to go between assessors and the Board of Health. Again, just looking for some time to set those things up for those users. Also, cybersecurity updates. The National Guard is actually going to be on site tomorrow to do a free, pretty much pen test for the entire town. Not only will they be here, they're going to set up a laptop, do some penetration tests overnight, see how those results come out. They told me, I was just on the phone with them a little while ago. They were telling me that, they're going to start something with non-passwords and then get passwords later on to see how, the differences in the report, so we can see where our weaknesses are. But also, not only that, we're going to go to all the different sites and see where those physical weaknesses are as well. Public safety, DPW, Court of the Hall, just see where people can get in easily, access areas where switches are, routers are, anything that of equipment of substance that they should not have access to. Because the ability is there for anybody to just walk in, plug into something and take something. So that's one way of eliminating that is just getting a report on how that's gonna, how we can prevent that stuff in the future. Hopefully there's not too much. On top of cybersecurity, I have just signed up for Duo two-factor authentication for all the town employees. I'm going to be rolling that out over the next few weeks or so. I have a kickoff meeting at some point this week. The people over at Xerox actually have multiple windows of opportunity for different silos in a sense of applications for either two-factor authentication or doing scans and audits and stuff like that. So I was able to leverage some of this off of Xerox, who demoed a lot of that application for me. With the it's called Duo is the application that's out there, and I'm going to integrate that with currently remote VPN, so that when our town employees are VPNing in, they would have dual authentication with that. Also with Office 365. And for logging onto your laptops, desktops within the town. At some point, I'm going to make your lives miserable and enable two-factor authentication for Office 365. I'll roll it out in slow forms and just get some people to test it out. But the ability is there with Office 365, which makes it great. It's a free add-on with Office 365 in our licenses. Just hasn't been leveraged yet, so we're going to put that in there for you guys. So wait for that to come. On top of that, there's also this service called Umbrella that I'm purchasing. What Umbrella does is it's a DNS filter. So if people are searching the web and there's a website out there that is not good, has some type of malicious applications out there, everybody will be going to the same DNS portal. I'm talking tech, I'm sorry, but you're going to the same DNS portal and going out to this application to search to see whether or not this website that you're going to is safe, and it lets you out. If it's not, it's going to block you. You're going to get a message, and then I'm going to get a phone call about why they got blocked. So it's the story of my life. But again, that's going to be something that I'm going to be kicking off over the next few weeks. I have that kickoff meeting, like I said, and either tomorrow or the day after, to get some of that stuff going. Last and not least, apparently for everyone here, is our job description and what we're going to be putting in place for hopefully a full-time employee. I had a really good meeting with the MTC. It was very in-depth about, what my thoughts are, what my feelings are, and how we should approach this. Currently, we've all agreed to having a job description as a senior IT specialist. It will, encompass everything in IT, not just networking, not just systems, not just managerial, not just help desk. It's going to kind of give us a whole for everything, so that I'm able to fall upon someone and actually have a life for a moment. So again, it's in jest, but it's something that I can at least grow with that person and grow with my own role here, because public sector has definitely been a new role for me. And having someone in place there to grow together and have that ability to say, hey, I'm going here, you take over, or vice versa on both cases. So if you guys have any questions or concerns, I know that there's some other parts that I can defer to Mark as far as the process and how this goes. There's a lot of bylaws and stuff that I don't understand yet, and I'm still understanding. So yeah, any questions or concerns you might have.
Great, thank you. So again, congratulations on hitting the ground running. You clearly have done that. This is pretty comprehensive. You haven't been here that long. I think it's great that all of the steps that you've put in place for cybersecurity. I know that was a big concern leading into town meeting from advisory and the board as well. So I'm glad to see that's moving forward, as well as on the senior IT specialist as well. So I will open it up to the board, but again, thank you for clearly all the hard work that you've done, and just know it's very much appreciated. We'll start with Mr. Healy this time.
Jay, two things. What's the process with the National Guard scan? What happens? And not in, you don't have to get down into the weeds. No, I'm sure you can. As I was asking the question, I realized that I was about to get an answer I didn't understand. So just in terms of what do they do here in general terms, and what flows from it?
So what they're going to do, the first steps right now, they give me this entire process of what is going to happen, a game plan pretty much, as they call it, a mission. So everything, I feel like I'm actually in the mission right now with them. So they're going to come on board first and set up a laptop, conduct some scans initially. Then I'm going to plan another day for them they're going to have at least 2 or 3 other members with me, that I'm going to go to each individual site, look at all the different sites, see the different vulnerabilities. That's the part that I was kind of talking about a little bit. See where we can fix things and correct things for the town. Once that part is done, they are going to compile all of their data, put it in a really nice report, they're saying, and send it to us and let us know where our weaknesses are, where our strengths are, where we can correct items. On top of that, they're also giving us the ability to take this report and they're going to supply me some information for grant money that I can get from the state to correct these issues. So hopefully it could be free money for us to get to correct any issues that they do find off of this report. Obviously, I would not be, divulging that report publicly. That would be something that I would not want to do. But if any one of you guys want to have a meeting, we can talk about what the items are and see where our weaknesses are and try to, figure out a game plan to getting those things fixed. And then I'll ask you about some subnetting questions and we'll be okay. But yeah, that's pretty much the game plan from start to finish. I can give you a really detailed mission statement from the Massachusetts National Guard. But that is exactly what we're looking at right now.
That's a great description. If you could forward along that mission statement. And one thought for both you and Mark is, we got that email from Representative Dykma about the state initiatives to identify monies that might be available through the federal legislation that's recently passed. And this might be a nice springboard into that area to identify some additional money. So, and the only other thing I have is, part of our discussion when we were leading up to hiring you, you might have been aware of some of it at the tail end, was to delay a decision about IT hiring until you got here.
Yeah.
So my only question is, what you've set down here, is that something that you are comfortable with, that the approach that is laid out there? That's, if you're comfortable with it, I'm comfortable with it. I just want to make sure that it's your vision, and you know, you're not trying to satisfy a lot of different constituencies.
Yeah. So it's taken me some time to kind of gather my thoughts about, you know, what I need. As you all know, I was at the town meeting and I got up there and I said stuff, and yeah, of course, I'm 3 or 4 weeks in and God knows, you know, I need help desk support. So help me now. You know, I'm 2 months in now. I have seen things in different angles. I have talked to a lot of different people. I know where my weaknesses are. I see the things that I need to get done in a managerial sense. And then I see the things that I need to get done in a network system sense. And I'm not having that time to get those things done at all. In some senses, there are items that I know they're hot items I need to get to. So with that time frame, yes, there has been lots of discussions and lots of things that I've heard and seen. And, you know, my opinion right now is this is what I need. I need someone at a high level that will at least understand networking, understand systems. I don't want to have to say, hey, do you know how to boot up a server? Or, hey, do you know what subnetting is? Do you know how to subnet this IP range? Can we take this server and install it? I don't want to have to walk through those things step by step. I need someone that I can just say, go, do, but also work together and grow together at the same time, but knowing and confident that I could say, let's get this part done. Let's get this mission done. I'm going to be working on this stuff. So yeah, definitely comfortable with my position at this point.
All right, Madam Chair, I'm all set.
Great, thank you. Mr. Stivers?
Thank you. Jay, as I think you know, I've been concerned about all the areas you reported on here, and I'm delighted to hear that you're making great progress in all those things. I think that we've been exposed in a lot of ways over the last 6 months and more here, and it certainly sounds like we're taking the right steps to tighten up, protect ourselves on many levels. And so Godspeed, and we will wish you good luck. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Sam. Mr. Dennington?
Hey, thank you. And I don't have much to add except to echo. I was very interested to hear your response to Marty there, because when I was involved, when I was in the advisory committee about some of the long-term discussions about the staffing for your department. And I think it's very good that you've recognized the need for, you know, that's going to ultimately help you, I think, to have someone there with you every step of the way, so you can, as you said, you know, have a life and take some time and have a vacation when you need to, without getting a call in the middle of the night or when you're on vacation about a town IT issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Malinowski.
Thank you. And I've had the opportunity to talk to Jay on the Board of Health side as well. So I just want to thank you again for all of the quick attention you've provided to that department, and kind of easing some of the concerns in the immediate need. I do have 2 questions, and I'm not sure that it's for you, Jay, but I know we have Mr. Purple here and Ms. Rosenblum. This senior IT specialist, is that defined in some way right now in the SAP, or is that something that we would be looking to add for fall town meeting? Okay, good. Sorry.
The head shake wasn't sufficient.
Oh, I didn't know if you had.
No, I'm sorry. No, it's yeah, I'll elaborate. I'm sorry. So I have had some preliminary discussions with Ms. Rosenblum, who's in the back of the room. I think it's important to get Jay and get him some help and get this position filled.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he said, he's hit the ground running. I'm not sure he's hit the ground, right? And so I think it's important to get the position. So I think that, I'm going to begin the conversation tomorrow with Personnel Board, just to try to set a path forward so that we can talk about a way to maybe, hire the position under an existing position, and then to work towards establishing, the senior IT specialist, job description and work with personnel board to establish it, to grade it, and then whether it be the fall meeting or the spring meeting, we can then put that in place and then transition the person simply from that one piece into the position that it should be.
Trustee before, if you don't mind. Ms. Rosenblum, do you have anything to add to what Mr. Purple said out of respect to you being the chair of personnel?
I can always say something.
Well, would you mind?
We're gonna get to know each other.
Yeah, very well.
Hugging now?
I don't know. We're gonna find out tonight, though. You're good to go.
Thanks. So actually, Mr. Purple has come to Personnel Board twice, May and June, May 12th, June 9th, to talk to us about various plans, including possibly trying to get something into the SAP for fall town meeting. And he embraced that, and we're ready to go and try to help you get what you need. We haven't haven't taken any position on what the position should be. Maybe someone on my board will. It hasn't been presented to us on the merits. I see the job of the board as helping the departments and Mr. Purple and you all get where you need to go within the SAP. And if you need something that's not there, we'll help you get there. So I had floated with Mark, I think at the volunteer brunch. There are a couple of positions already in the SAP. If you hire into those positions while we work toward the proposal, and then it will have to be approved by town meeting to add a position or reclassify a position. We're ready to go for fall town meeting if you all are. I think Mark mentioned that he would have a job description for us for our July meeting, and it's already on my draft agenda. So if it's possible to do it for a fall town meeting, that'd be great.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Chelsea. I'll come back to you.
Thank you. One more question, Jay. Is there anything that you need from us?
Support. That you guys have been great. I've been hearing a lot of really good things as far as support from you guys, and that's what I need. I just need to know that I have the support of the board to get what I need done, to protect the town, to assist myself in having a life. But just the support would be great. Thank you.
Great. Mr. Purple, is there anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, I just wanted to add a couple of comments. So I appreciate Jay coming in tonight. I think it was a great opportunity for the board to hear where he's been, what he's been up to over the past 2 months. I think obviously he heard loud and clear some of the discussions that we had early on as to where the issues were that he needed to get into: Board of Health, cybersecurity, those type of things, he has worked really well on. I do want to point out, Jay came to us from the private sector. He didn't have any municipal experience. I think that's a good thing, because he's not, is not into a certain way of doing things. I mean, if we're hiring a finance director, a town accountant, you need that municipal experience because it is a little bit different than private sector. But, Jay took a leap and, and came to us. And, I think he's done a great job so far. Unfortunately for him, I continue to set the bar higher given everything he gives us, because, the ability is there. And I know we had to wait 5 months. I know there was a lot of complaining. There was a lot of tough time getting through, but, I will tell you, based on what we've seen so far, it was worth the wait. So I appreciate it.
Well said, Mr. Purple. Thank you. And Jay, before we let you leave, and we're going to keep you here all night, because we're talking about a life. We're actually going to move under 6E, discussion of continued use of virtual Zoom meetings for boards and committees. So I think this is to kind of piggyback on the conversations that we've already had, and to get some additional thoughts and work with Jay to find a path forward. I know at our last meeting, or the last time we had this discussion, we had talked about the use of Zoom and how it was great, and the public participation has increased, and the public has been able to view boards and committees that they may not have in the past. And I think there's a renewed interest in what goes on at the town level. So I think one of the things, and I don't know, I could be wrong from the last meeting, it was very long, whether we reached a conclusion, but the discussion, I think, is what path the board would like to take, potentially, if it's maybe having our permitting boards start being in person again that are under us, using the capability that we're using tonight. And what our thoughts are as far as boards and committees, and what recommendations we'd like to give. And having Jay here as well, I think will be useful to that discussion as to kind of where we see the path go, whether we just take advantage of being allowed to use Zoom through April, or just kind of everybody's thoughts. So, Mr. Stivers, I will start with you.
Okay. I think the Zoom capability is very helpful for the reasons that you mentioned, Lisa. And seems to me that at least I would be in favor of allowing committees to continue to use Zoom until whatever the deadline is, April 22nd or something, I think is the current deadline. I also agree with you on the permitting boards. It seems to me that it is useful to have in-person access to that, in terms of people looking at plans and diagrams and so forth in the same room. And so, again, to the extent we can, I don't know, for example, what kind of legal control we have over that relative to groups like the Planning Board and Board of Health, who are independently elected boards, but seems to me it's worth encouraging permitting boards to use the in-person capabilities with access to the public. I understand that we've not heard from Southborough Access Media relative to their ability to make this room electronically accessible as it was before the pandemic. Hopefully that will happen soon, and that will be a plus in terms of the in-person meetings in this room, for example. So it seems to me, again, that sort of dual path where you've got permitting boards meeting, if at all possible, in person with public access electronically, and then other boards, their choice, if they prefer to meet in person. I don't think, my personal view is I don't think we should require Zoom there, but I would certainly encourage people to consider that. And then otherwise, if other questions come up, we deal with it later, but that seems to me to be a good path forward. Thank you.
Great, Sam, thank you. I'm just gonna, before Mr. Dennington, before I go to you, Mr. Purple has spoken to Sam, Cable Access, not Mr. Stivers, Sam. So if you'd like to update.
Yeah, all capital letters, Sam, sorry. So I had an email conversation back and forth with Terry at the studio today. It appears that the piece of equipment that resides in the cabinet over there has, from what I understand, died a natural death. And so they need to determine, replacement. I think the SAM board is meeting this week to talk about what they want to do. The message that I relayed was kind of similar, Sam, to what you said. In that, we're looking for the level of coverage that Sam was giving us pre-pandemic, and with the understanding that some of these boards and committees that never were being covered by them have now actually enjoyed, having, these records of their meetings and everything, and they're likely going to continue virtual. I have asked that we meet again on July 13th, and my sincere hope is that either the system is fixed or they have a workaround, because while the Zoom has been good as a bridge, it doesn't really work, I think, as a permanent solution, although we're getting better at it. But it's still a little bit clunky. It still interrupts the flow of the meeting. So hopefully, we've got something, back to pre-pandemic levels in the next couple of weeks, at least for our meetings.
Thank you, Mr. Dennington.
I know that for this board, I like meeting in person, and I hope that we can get Southborough Access Media up and running like it was before. So that would eliminate the need to have these computers, right? Okay. And I agree with what I think is the suggestion here, that for the boards that were covered by SAM before, to have them covered by SAM. But I think it would be very helpful for other committees, particularly some of the committees that sometimes meet, like 8 o'clock in the morning or 9 o'clock in the morning, to have those boards and committees meet by Zoom because, allows you to participate if you're in Boston or if you're in an office somewhere.
Great, thank you, Mr. Jensen. Ms. Malinowski.
So I actually would prefer the Zoom environment, but not in the current setup. So, and the reason why I say that is if you're on SAM, there's no ability for the public to participate remotely. And I think there is an advantage to that. So I guess what I was thinking about is, and I'm going to put you on the spot for a second, but I'm kind of thinking, is there a way that we don't need to have individual laptops, but there's some sort of camera set up with hot mics so that we are not getting like feedback in the room and it's not as labor intensive for you. Like it's nice that you've been here for all of our Tuesday night meetings, but we've met now, I don't know how many in a row. And it's great to have the tech support, but is there a way that we can make it simpler so that you don't physically have to be here? And then we could leave instructions if, let's say Shofsky, for example, just throwing that out there, wanted to meet at 8 a.m. on a Wednesday and you're down at Senior Center and we can set it up ourselves. And the only other thing I'll say is I do, we have this one meeting room that we can do this today, but once everybody else starts to, and I think boards and committees can make the decision to stay on Zoom like completely until April. But if there are boards and committees that want to meet, like we had a board and health meeting this morning, there was no public videoing or availability for the public to watch remotely, and I think that's a disadvantage for the residents. So I guess my position is I would like to explore other options so that it's not as labor intensive and that we have this capability in more than just this one.
So that's definitely an on the spot question. So in my first couple of weeks here, I had an opportunity to meet another town and see how they were doing things. I think I may have mentioned some of that before. They had a setup. I think that maybe I want to check back in with them and see what they're doing now. Because when they were doing it, they had one laptop set up and they had some type of, they had a bunch of connections which I actually purchased because I wasn't sure where we were going. And they had it all connected to their setup here with Sam, or it's different over there, obviously. But they had everything hooked up and they were able to pretty much take the feeds from the cameras, put it into Zoom, and then have the mics be their feed into the sound for Zoom. Again, it was very high level. Hey, this is the equipment. This is what we have. This is what we're doing. And, again, it's 2 or 3 weeks in. So I'm really just like looking at all this like, oh my goodness. Because, I'm not a TV person either. So I don't know a lot of that equipment. Is it possible? Yes, I've seen it, like I said, somewhere else. How we can do it, I would really have to dig into an easier way to setting that all up. Again, I don't know how simple it would be for one of you or anyone in a committee to just say, if it's that simple, by all means, here's a training, here's what we got to do, let's get it set up, hit play, you're done. But I don't know that answer yet. I would have to dig around and see what I can find. And I'll check back with that town as well and see what they have done since everything has opened up, because maybe they're just strictly with their local media access now. I'm not sure. So I'll check back and I'll update you guys when I know more on that.
Mr. Purple, you have a comment?
Yes. So I think that the one piece to Ms. Malinowski's point is that the successful ones are a collaboration with the local cable studios and being able to make it work. The other piece about extending it beyond this room. So in the new Verizon cable contract, there was money to create this setup again in public safety. Okay, so we will have 2 rooms that will be, fully wired and able to, give this kind of, quality, with multiple angle cameras and everything in that. But again, that collaboration with Sam, is really what would make this work, I think, the way that you're envisioning.
Thank you. Chelsea, did you have anything else? No. Mr. Healy?
Following up on Ms. Malinowski, I mean, she was talking about, I think, a situation where, independent of Sam, there'd be sort of a Zoom environment in here. For us, in other words, we'd be zoomed out there into cyber. And that may be, you know, with a big screen over there, and it may be an option. And I suspect that there are companies out there that are trying to develop technology that not just for public entities, but for private entities to make that sort of capability. But how about something sort of a lighter version, if you will, of that, where we're in a normal environment, we're being, you know, televised by Southborough Access Media, and so that creates the visual record that people can tap into if they're not able to be at the meeting or watch the meeting. But whether it's a member of the board who's not able to be present, or someone, member of the public who's not able to be present, where they're able to be zoomed into the meeting without the entire environment being zoomed. It strikes me that sort of, again, Zoom Lite, if you will, is probably the preference. Others might have a much different comfort level with the idea of handling that sort of technology, you know, by themselves. By that, I don't. But being able to, I mean, it just strikes me as a big deal that if one of us isn't available, there's a process where we can call in and the like. It'd be nice to be on screen, and I think it makes it easier to converse and collaborate. But particularly for the public, if they're not able to be here, either because they're away or because of personal circumstances, it's a big advantage if we can make that available. So again, I'm not looking for an answer right now, but it just strikes me that is the most important part of it, to let the public who's not able to be here have access to the meetings. And then the only other thing I'll say is that it's kind of follows or is consistent with that. And I don't know if we want to think about it from a policy standpoint, but it has been nice from, you know, we have I don't know how many different boards and committees we have that I don't want to say report to us, but that we appoint, that are, you know, implementing either town policy that we had a primary role in putting together, or again, a secondary role that we appointed that board. It's nice to know what's going on with those boards and committees.
Yeah.
It really is. And the minutes of those meetings are not the same sort of window into what's going on as a visual record. And you can sort of see, if you track on the YouTube, you can see the number of, I mean, it is sort of interesting. You can tell when something on an agenda was interesting because the number of views skyrocket. And, you know, we're always exploring ways. How do we get more people at town meeting? How do we get more people to volunteer? How do we? Well, one of the ways we do that is to make government more accessible. And whether or not we actually consider a policy that whether it's meeting in public safety, meeting here, but a committee meeting entirely by Zoom, for the most part, that's for the convenience of the committee. And I don't think that should be our most important consideration. In-person meetings, I think, are really important for government to do its business. I mean, we survived the last 16 months, but I think it's really important for us to be here, and not just to be seen by Zoom, and not just for the Board of Selectmen, every committee. And so to the extent we can encourage them to either do your meetings by Zoom in the current environment, or meet here, we're not quite at public safety yet, where there can be a recording of it through this process. Because I'd like us not to get away from that. I'd like us not to get away from the fact that we are creating a visual record for people to actually know what's going on in their government. I think that's a really big deal. And I would encourage boards and committees out there, to the extent you can, either meet by Zoom, so there's a visual record, or find a way to meet where there can be a visual record created in the townhouse. It's not going to be perfect. We're not going to be able to get everybody. But again, I just think, you know, it's important for the residents of Southborough, if they choose to be able to go on YouTube and see what the heck's going on with the Board of Selectmen, with any other board in the town. So I guess that's my piece. Again, not looking for an answer, just I think that's really important for us to try to encourage.
So I agree, Marty, and my takeaway on that as well is, were you offering to create a policy? I thought I heard that. I just wanted to double check before we move on.
I'm happy to take a dive, sure.
I like sitting in this chair. So I think we're all on the same page with that. I think it's I completely agree. It's important for the public. And I think the public participation has increased. I mean, I myself have been able to watch meetings I may not have been able to attend. So I think it's important for this board, and I think it's important for the public as well. So we can certainly send out a note based on the comments tonight, Mr. Purple, to our boards and committees, letting them know that, you know, what our hope is. And I think, Jay, if you wouldn't mind adding another thing on your plate and exploring, you know, possibilities of expanding the use here. And another thing I think we need to consider as well is during COVID, during those Zoom meetings, we had staff kind of manning, opening the meetings and being available for the meetings. I think we should consider some form of training for the boards and committees as well. So whether it's, you know, yeah.
That was gonna be my next comment, was just to make sure that we can at least have, you know, an ambassador for each one of these committees take over, because again, you all know there's so much on my plate that and it was the same for Tom, and I feel bad for him because he was really in the middle of all of it. But having that ambassador for each committee, you know, take over that responsibility and creating the meeting and, you know, starting the meeting, recording the meeting, YouTube in the meeting, until we can figure out another process that can merge with Sam. It would be a great help and relief off of my plate, just to make sure that we have that ability. And I'm more than willing. You know, Tim Davis is obviously, he's had a really big dive in this himself, and he's got some nice setup instructions on how to do some of the things. And if we can work on that, tweak that out, and get that to some like ambassadors to each committee to work that would be great as well.
Yeah, no, I think that would be great. And I think it would now that the townhouse is back and business is being conducted here, it would make things a lot easier for our employees as well, that, you know, we're staying up late and manning some of these meetings. And so maybe Mr. Purple as well, when we send out a note, we can let them know that we'll be looking for ambassadors to, you know, as we continue forward on Zoom. You know, training, a Zoom training is the best, because then they can watch it at their leisure as well. So, okay.
So I'm sorry. So just one other thing. There was an email that went out to all the boards and committees already that, you know, told them kind of where we were, told them what the new legislation gave them. And one of the directives, and I had talked with Jay about this, was, you know, if you want to meet in person, you know, that's great. You need to make sure you follow the normal steps pre-pandemic that you had to do. If you want to meet remotely, you need to make sure that you follow these things. And with the new step of, you need to have somebody who can open your meetings, who can host your meetings, because now the staff, as you just said, is back in person. We don't have the ability for people to do that anymore. Jay doesn't have that on his plate. And Tim Davis, because Tim had conducted a training or two, you know, in that in between Tom and Jay, is said he's willing to do more trainings to get people on board. So we're setting the path for that, and to make sure that we're not putting more onto his plate than he can handle.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments? Great. We're staying. All right, thank you. Next on the agenda is reports. So I just wanted to report back. We had a great turnout of the Board of Selectmen for the volunteer appreciation lunch. I think it was breakfast, sorry. It was a great turnout overall. There were over 40 people there. It was a great opportunity for the board to be able to talk to everybody. And I think the best part of what came out of it for me was seeing the different boards and committees networking with each other, you know, finding a common ground that as we move forward, you know, collaboration is always a great thing. And they found interests on the different committees that they can work together on things. So I thank all the volunteers, all that came, all that didn't come, hopefully next year they'll be able to attend. It was, again, extremely successful. And I think I speak for the board when I say we're very appreciative of everybody that came and the conversations that were able to take place that day too. It was a nice hour and a half. So thank you to all of our volunteers. As well, I was going there. Thank you. So I did want to also thank Vanessa Hale for coordinating the breakfast. She basically ran with this one and took care of it from front to back, and it turned out really well again. And I think the food was good. The company was absolutely good. So again, thank you to Vanessa as well. So also just a reminder for, I believe it's Ms. Galligan and Mr. Ballantyne's for the board reviews.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, so
Due Friday.
they're due Friday. Any
Comments.
comments? So Mark can incorporate themes within the reviews. So that's just a reminder for the board on that. So that is all I have. So we have master plan update.
So this item is actually really more something about the volunteer breakfast, because at the volunteer breakfast on Thursday, I was speaking with Bill Sines, who's on the master plan committee, and Sam was sitting next to me too. And we had a really good discussion, and he made a good point about how we collectively, and by the we, I think he means not so much the Board of Selectmen as the entire, the Southborough town government. We can do a better job of, after we have all these goal setting meetings, kind of tracking in a systematic way our way to try to meet those goals. And so it occurred to us that the master plan committee has been meeting, I think, since it's coming to a point where we can expect a completed master plan, maybe in the next couple of months. At some point before the special town meeting in the fall. And I think it's something that our board should consider, is working with the planning board in a way that we could have set in place a process so that, whatever are the objectives, the highest priority objectives of the master plan, that we can play a role in helping them get done. And for example, we might have a process where there's a quarterly update. If we just have a standing item on our agenda that at the end of every quarter, we would look back on the list of the 5 most top priority items from the 2021 master plan and check in and see if there's anything else we can do to make progress on those. So as I said, it's not really so much as an update on what the master plan is going to say. I think Sam is in a better position to speak to that than I am. But I thought that there was an example of where the volunteer breakfast really was able to hopefully, bring a good suggestion to the attention of our board.
Could I add to that?
I was just going to ask you to, Sam, go right ahead.
Yeah, great idea, Andrew. And again, for those of you who've been around a while, the 2008 master plan had, I can't remember the exact numbers, but something like over 100 objectives and 250 implementation steps. And just a blizzard of good things that should be done, but it was very difficult to sort the priorities out of that. And as a result, a lot less was done, I think, than might have been possible. One of the conversations that the current master plan committee has been having is to narrow the focus of the process and wind up ultimately with some sort of set of priorities that come around the recommendations. And I think Andrew's point is a great one. If we could actually take some of those thoughts that come out of that process, incorporate them in the planning work that the Board of Selectmen is scheduled to be doing, I think, later this summer sometime, and broaden the set of goals that we've developed previously and to include some of these other things. I think there's overlap as well. I think we have things on our list that the master plan committee is going to have also. So find a way to work together and focus priorities in ways that we can get things done and track over the next months and years here, and actually have a better record this time of accomplishing things. And I think that given the federal programs that are rolling along here, I think that opens up some possibilities of doing things that normally we might not be able to afford to do. So putting all that together in ways that can communicate to the public and get input, and then provide updates in terms of how we're doing, I think all that does fit together very nicely. So that seems to me also to be a great idea. Thanks, Andrew.
Great, thank you both. Chelsea or Marty, is there anything unexpected that's not on it? Okay. Mr. Purple, I see you have nothing under you, but I'm sure there's something.
I don't have any, excuse me, I don't have anything. I just wanted to point out to the board, and again, this may be old news for some, but the vaccination, regional vaccination clinic in Westboro closed its doors today after a very successful effort on behalf of the participating communities. Again, great work, from all of the boards of health, the regional, the health directors, the fire chiefs, CERT teams, MRC, all the volunteers, the paid staff that was hired to do the intake. Really just a great job by everybody. And again, special thanks to Kristen Black in Northborough for kind of, wrangling the whole operation. Did a good thing. And so, if you went on the right day, you might have seen Miss Braccio greeting you at the door. And then you get a shot. But it was a great effort. It was pulled together very quickly. We had to fight to get approval. And, I just was really pleased how it came together. So kudos to everybody for that effort and for the good that it did for the communities.
Very well said. Thank you, Mr. Purple. All right, number 5, consent agenda. I anticipate some holds, so we'll just go down the line here, Ms. Malinowski.
A, C, E, and J.
All right, Mr. Healy, do you have anything to add to that?
I do not.
Mr. Stivers,
No additions.
Mr. Dennington,
No additions.
and Ms. Brashear, no additions. So do we have a motion to approve consent agenda items A, D, F, G, H?
It's not A.
Oh, I'm sorry. Which one did you hold?
I held that.
Again. Do we have a motion to approve consent agenda items B, D, F, G, H, and I? Yes.
So the intent on B is to appoint everyone on the list who was not held the last meeting, right? That's the.
Yes, but now that you say that, I'm actually going to hold B.
Okay.
So thank you. Thank you for the reminder. Much appreciated. So I guess I'll try this one more time. Do we have a motion to approve consent agenda D, F, G, H, and I?
So moved. Second.
All right, we'll do. Ms. Malinowski.
Okay. So A on June 8th minutes, row 34. I think that should say in town/government relations.
Oh, let's put them down.
Well, I was
No, I
think it's town and gal. Okay, okay,
Schools, basically.
okay. I have never heard of that before, but that's fine. Okay, so then in that, sorry, in that paragraph, can we add something about it would include monthly office hours and 3 board meetings? I didn't see that in there.
It is in their written materials that it's in their RFP, response to the RFP.
Right.
Oh, your point is they talked about it at the meeting as well.
Yes,
Okay.
yes. And then in like rows 52 and 53, add something about infrastructure and funding needs. as well as the public safety compliance issues. That's all I have.
Okay, any other edits to A?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, discussion? All right, show of hands. All those in favor? All those opposed? Right. Thank you. I held B. We'll just go in order, Chelsea, if you don't mind. So on B, there was a couple changes to that. Under Economic Development Committee, Suzanne Duca is not seeking reappointment. Is that correct? And under the master plan, I need to be added back in. So it will be adding me with a term of 6/30/21. And I believe that was it. So any comments, discussion? Okay, so do we have a motion to appoint board and committee members fiscal year 22 as amended?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Opposed? Thank you very much.
I'm abstaining from this one.
Item C, any further discussion? Okay. Do we have a motion to appoint capital planning committee members fiscal year 22?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Opposed? Abstained?
Abstain. I'm abstaining.
Okay.
From E.
Great. Any discussion on E? Okay, hearing none. Do we have a motion to accept Crown Castle Flagpole Assembly Bill of Sale?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Opposed? Abstained? Thank you.
I had some changes, so if we can kick this to the next executive.
Okay, Mr. Purple, can we put this on executive before meeting on the 13th? Okay, great. Thank you, everyone. I think we covered everything there. Next up, discussion of downtown district bylaw initiative. John, do you want to come up and call your meeting to order? You're good. Okay, so that's already been done. So if you guys want to come up a little bit closer, we'll just give like an update and then we can kind of get into discussion. So thank you for coming. So the purpose of tonight is we're kind of found ourselves at a point where there seems to be 4 outstanding main issues with planning board, which are the 2,000, 3,000 for establishment, the 4-story, the FAR ground coverage, and the map. So I think just as an update to what the board has, obviously that's the blue in the copy that's on the table for you is was forwarded via email as well. It's the conversation that Attorney Costa had with Ms. Luttrell and Ms. Houlihan regarding the mixed use that there was some concern on, and that's the language that they had all agreed that they supported. So I do. And this should have been forwarded to you guys as well. Everybody should have that. So there was only a few minor changes on page 1, at the bottom of page 1, and then under permitted uses, number 2. Oh, sorry, I take that back. And on page 3. So, and again, those were supplied prior. So I think in looking forward and how we want to move ahead, I know there was an email that came from the planning board that everybody had a copy of on the table tonight. It came late this afternoon, so it didn't make the packet. Yeah, I was just gonna give it to him. Thank you, Marty. So I know some of what we had discussed was the design guidelines. And we had discussed this back in November when Judy Barrett was here, and we talked about the hope and the need that as we move forward with this, that the two should be done in conjunction. That it's kind of hard to go to town meeting and without having both of these in place. So EDC had forwarded John back in November. Okay, in early November, I think it was Marika had crafted some design guidelines, and planning board had discussed them. And my understanding was the take from that meeting was it was a great first start. Move ahead to now, John and I had talked, and we were wondering where they were in the process as we're getting kind of down to the last final issues here, so we can all move forward and be on the same page. And planning board had discussed it at their meeting last night. I know, Sam, they said you were there in person as well. So just to share for those that may be watching at home, in the email, it says that planning board members in consensus want to clarify that they will be reviewing the design guidelines, but not creating them. In their opinion, a task best left to a consultant. They also indicated that since design guidelines are predicated by the downtown district bylaw, the proposed bylaw should be in final draft version prior to design guideline review. They anticipate providing review and feedback to design guidelines once it's understood what the final draft bylaw is, which should also address the zoning map. Then when ready, a complete final package submitted to the board. So basically they would start their public hearing process. So this kind of throws a little bit of a wrench, I guess.
Is it a surprise?
Well,
Sorry.
we will, it throws a little bit of a wrench because now we're at the down to 9 days left with monies from the grant, 8 days left, monies from the grant to bring someone in. I had a brief discussion with Judy Barrett today to try to expand on what Marika had maybe done. It's kind of late in the game to try to create this. So I think we have a little bit of a conundrum here, if I may. I don't know if John would use that quite word, but we had discussed this today. So this is one of the paths forward that we need to figure before. I think Judy was pretty clear in saying that they needed to be done in conjunction before you go to town meeting. So because it creates, I'll look to Julie for this. It creates standards and guidelines to what you can build and how you can build it.
May I speak?
Absolutely. Go ahead. Go ahead.
You just did space bar.
Yeah, sorry. Let me mute.
Thank you, Board of Selectmen, for having us here and for discussing this. I agree with what you were saying, Chairman Braccio, regarding the design guidelines being in conjunction with the standards. I'm wondering if there were, I'm not sure what conversations were had around this email. I know this email just came today, but I'm wondering if there is, what sort of the rationale behind segregating these two portions are. As you know, Marika worked with us and we proposed draft design guidelines back in early November. This has never been raised before. We've been transparent that we've had this grant money available to us through the end of June. We've raised this issue multiple times, and I'm just, you know, we're down to a small handful of issues. We think maybe 3 at the moment, probably less, hopefully by the end of this session. And that's been pretty much the case. Maybe there were 6 or 8 a couple of months ago for quite some time. And I'm not sure how, you know, working together to come to consensus on a couple of metrics affects the design guidelines. I don't think that if we change the FAR or change the building height, that necessarily has any impact on how the design guidelines would read. So I'm not sure why that step is necessary, but being that we are in the position that we are in right now, and also knowing that Judy Barrett is very busy and I suspect would not have time to put too much effort into this within the next week or so. I think we do need to think about how we want to proceed with this, because we're not starting from scratch by any means. We have a draft that Marika put together, was very well received by the planning board. Many planning board members commented that they thought it was a great starting point. And we've raised it a few times. We've heard no, aside from a few stray comments, we haven't heard anything really substantive on them. So I would love to hear this board's ideas on how to proceed with that, because planning for fall town meeting, as we know, these things creep up real quick. And I think we've talked about this several times that, when our residents want to envision the downtown, it's really the design standards that's going to create certain controls visually. And again, just so everyone's clear, the reason why we separated the design standards from the bylaw itself is that the bylaw in its current form has substantially been in effect for 60 some odd years. It's, as we all know, very difficult to change. That's sort of by design. It shouldn't be, zoning shouldn't be changed all the time. However, we also know that designs and styles do change. And I think particularly in the climate we're in right now, with climate change, being in effect, new laws, new technologies, new materials that might come up to deal with that. I think we do want that flexibility in the design guidelines to be more easily changeable or flexible, which is why we thought it was appropriate to grant the planning board the authority to make those modifications as they see fit going forward, without having to go to a 2/3 vote at town meeting, because there's new building materials that create a better standard for what we're looking for, either style wise or conservation wise or otherwise. So, but I do think they are really critical. So if the planning board is not ready to take that on in a timely fashion that works with us and is recommending a consultant, do we have other budget opportunities available to pay for that consultant? Because I just don't think that can be done before the end of the month. And I really wish that this had been raised sooner, because I would have loved to have used that money. We still have some left in the budget to accommodate this, but at this point, that seems like a stretch to me.
Thank you. We get feedback if we don't. So Judy and I spoke briefly, not about this issue, because this actually came in towards the end of the day. I think we received it close to 3 o'clock this afternoon. So I had already spoken to her briefly. I mean, I can certainly reach out to her tomorrow and see what her thoughts are as far as taking what Marika has already created and trying to expand on that. Or if she can't, maybe she can recommend somebody that she knows. That, again, I think we need to continue to move forward. I think that's the most important thing, John. Your voice, but see Julie.
I mean, could we reach out to, after you speak with Judy, can we reach out to other firms that do relatively the same thing to see if they could get it done in time if she can't, because time is the essence of this.
I agree. Sorry, I agree, and we can do that simultaneously, John. If you guys want to make some calls tomorrow, I can reach out to Judy in the morning. Had we not been in person today and we were doing Zoom participation, she may have been able to Zoom in. She actually had a little bit of a free time this evening. So she may be actually watching. So she may have a heads up, but we can certainly make some calls tomorrow morning and figure out where, meet up in the afternoon, set up a call in the afternoon and see where we stand on this. And obviously we'll open this up to comments from the board as well. Okay, no, so I think, on this point alone, the board has kind of heard, I think we're kind of in agreement on what we're saying on this. So I guess opening it up, thoughts on where we go. And I think actually, we start with Ms. Malinowski this time. Oh, she didn't mute.
I think that makes the most sense to see if we can try to fit it in. I don't know what other option exists. It'd be nice to be able to use the funding that's still available through 6:30. I don't know how feasible that is, but I think it's worth a try.
Thank you. Sorry, John. Let me just go down the line first. Mr. Haley.
I think I'm going to hold comment. I am frustrated by where we find ourselves. And I didn't comment when Mr. Dennington and Mr. Stivers were talking about the master plan and the notion of kumbaya for, having goals that we all get together. You can go as far back as you go with master plans and planning documents in Southborough. Dealing with the issues in downtown is one of the top, if not the top issue. And so I am skeptical about your kumbaya moments because I don't hear the master plan committee and the various committees that make it up getting behind the support of this initiative. The master plan committee is a creature of the planning board. Again, I'm very skeptical about the timing of this and what it means. At some point there's good money after bad. And I'm not sure if we shouldn't be thinking about and talking about a completely different route than the one we followed so far. What are we on, June 22nd? And this is the email we received with something that could have been expressed 6-8 months ago and dealt with, I think, relatively easily in terms of the time frame. And we're getting it on, 9-8 days before the money's running out that could have been used for it. Again, I'm skeptical that the oars in the boat are all pulling in the same direction here.
Thank you, Mr. Stivers.
Quick comment on the master plan issue. I think master plan committee actually has downtown as one of the areas of focus, as a matter of fact. So I think that's going to be on the list. And at least if I have anything to say about it, my priority.
No, but that's putting it on the list is one thing, Sam. Doing what you and Andrew described a couple of minutes ago, which is setting it as a goal, talking about the fact that it's important. You've got to think that the folks on the master plan committee know that we're talking about this, and we've set a potential, special town meeting in the fall. Putting it on a list is fine, but it's not doing what you and Andrew were talking about, which is identifying it as a goal and taking steps to accomplish that goal. Those are very different things, and I don't see anything by the master plan committee that is pushing in the direction of getting this done. So if it's a priority, make it a priority.
We can have that debate offline, I think, but I'm more hopeful than you are. Relative to the issue at hand here, I think that there is a path that can allow us to move forward, and that I looked at the design guidelines that EDC had proposed. Turns out there are like 7 pages worth of that document that are the design guidelines. It's not a 100-page document. I think it was a good cut as a first pass. I think that, frankly, if we do something with that in the near term here, we're not talking about producing a, quotes, final document that will never be edited again. It simply allows us to take the package with the bylaw language and the design guidelines to the next step with the planning board in terms of public hearings and so forth. And people, not only the planning board, but the public will weigh in at that point and modify those guidelines as everybody sees fit. So I think it's not the last pass that we'll have at it, but I think it's good enough to allow us to move forward. And anything we can do over the next week here in terms of getting additional input, I think is very helpful. But I don't see that this is regrettable as it may be in terms of, where we are today with this and why, et cetera, et cetera. I think you got to look forward and take what we have and try to move forward with it. So I think we're not that far from being able to put the complete package together in a way that will generate productive conversation and allow us to move toward a town meeting review in the fall. Thanks.
Mr. Stivers, 2 questions. When is when is the master plan committee next meeting?
June 30th.
All right, will you commit to bringing this up with the master plan committee?
Absolutely. We have discussed it, but I'll bring it up again.
Okay, and all right, I asked my 2 questions. I won't go any farther.
All right, Mr. Dennington.
I have 2 questions. First, when we had the joint meeting with the planning board, was it 3 weeks ago? Was this issue, did this issue come up? Because I don't, okay. And the second is just to push back on the idea that the 2 things have to go together. I have been looking, I was first looking to find a way on the internet, I could word search it, but is there a reference to the design guidelines in the bylaw? All right, so where, do you know where it is?
Point of information for the audience here, what package do you want?
I can answer that.
Yeah, Betsy, it wasn't in the packet.
It's version 8, which is it's attached to a bunch of different.
Yeah, a bunch of different packets. It's online as well.
So in part 5, which is on page 5, the last sentence, the planning board may adopt design guidelines and apply them to major plan approval applications regardless of whether a special permit is required.
So, I mean, to me, that suggests that you don't need to have design guidelines absolutely ready to go before you take action on this bylaw. We could take action on this bylaw without, I mean, I've always thought that it would be the planning board that would want to take an interest in, you know, having the laboring or on their own design guidelines.
Thank you. 2 thoughts on this. So yes, we had originally talked about, can we bring the bylaw to town meeting without finalized guidelines? And maybe put in some sort of, you know, with it, put in some sort of time frame, and they'll be promulgated and agreed upon within 6 months or something like that. We chose not to go that route, or at least decided that wasn't the optimal path, because we think the design guidelines really show the substance of what the downtown will look like. So we thought it would just raise a lot of questions at the meeting. What do these metrics mean? So I'm open to your guidance, but I still don't think that's the optimal route. I just wanted to add one other idea. And we've always talked about this as being in the purview of the standing planning committee, planning board. That's not how all communities or municipalities do it. There are municipalities that have a separate design guideline, design review committee. We spoke about that briefly. We decided that, you know, we wanted to partner with the planning board. We thought that that's what they would want, expressed that's what they would want when we asked them, and we stuck with that since then. If they're not interested in this, maybe that's something to think about with representation from different boards and committees, or people who are really sort of, you know, are homegrown experts in the field of you know, architecture or building or construction or things like that. It's just a thought that I have now. If the planning board isn't interested in being the board that is going to promulgate and enforce the design guideline.
So
guidelines were great. They actually strengthened their position, not took away from it.
all right, thank you, John. So I'll give my 2 cents on this, Andrew. I think they're important. And I think if you don't have them or something in place for town meeting, it's another reason, or you're giving another opportunity for not having a complete package when we come to town meeting to pass. And I think it piggybacking from what you said, the importance of it and what it means in creating and giving you the visual effects without having that as a big part of it. That's my opinion. Go ahead.
Who's gonna do it? If ultimately they have to be adopted by the planning board, and the planning board saying like they don't want to do it, are we gonna do it? Or
Well, if you read the email, they'll review it. They're looking for the design guidelines. Let's see, it should be, they anticipate providing review and feedback once it's understood. So, Mark, did you want to go ahead?
Yeah, but we have a draft.
Right, Marika has created a draft that was distributed in November and discussed.
Sorry. Just, yeah, so the design guidelines were, I guess the draft design guidelines were given to the planning board. They actually told us at that time that they would review them. So I'm not sure if they don't have a date on there. I'm not sure when they plan to review them. The design guidelines that we are proposing are something extra that the South Fork currently doesn't have. And in the draft design guidelines, we basically list the whole historic, there was a study done by the Historic Society or Historic Commission. And we look at the historic, basically qualities of downtown and try to encourage that. So they're like subjective guidelines as opposed to the performance standards that are in the zoning bylaw. So yes, I would love to have them combined because it kind of gives people, I think, peace of mind that what we want to do in downtown is preserve the historic nature of downtown because that's its strength, and at the same time allows for some specific uses by right that we want to indicate to developers or investors that those are the kind of activities that we would want to have in downtown. I don't think it's absolutely impossible to go ahead with a zoning update to what we currently have and do the design guidelines in step 2, because like I said, it's an extra step that we currently don't have. So, I mean, I think by passing the zoning bylaw, it would be a benefit for Southborough and the downtown. So that's all.
Sorry. So, just give me just 1 second. So, again, I think we should take the opportunity. There is still grant funds there to take what Marika has created and see what we can come up with and have something. I mean, at this point, that's my recommendation, but I know, I'm sorry, Mr. Belknap, you wanted to speak, so I will.
I'd like to follow on to something that Selectman Dennington said, is that I want to be mindful of the who. And so we could try to figure out who's doing what, who's doing this, who should do that in the review process. We're on version 8/9 of this document here. If we're going to employ the effort of a consultant to do something, it may be worth considering capping the number of revisions we have, so we don't find ourselves in analysis paralysis and find ourselves in version 9 of the review of those guidelines in October. So while we want to make, I think we can all agree we want to make some forward progress, but we should just be mindful of how much are we going to consider this whole entire review process.
Okay, thank you. So I think we're at a point that I think the revisions at this point, I think we're down to 4 items. So, but my thought process is on the reviews and the versions, it shows a lot of time and a lot of effort went in. If we have 8 versions of a document that we started out on number 1, that due diligence has been done by everyone involved in this. You know, there've been multiple joint meetings on this, with Shopsy included, planning board, and so I think we're close, and hopefully as we continue the discussion past this piece, I just want to be clear that the board is in agreement on the next steps before the 30th, while we still have an opportunity, while funds are still available, that the board is in agreement to tomorrow reach out to Judy, to reach out to John. You mentioned a couple firms, and see what we can get done, because I think, like I said, I think Marika has created a great starting point that somebody isn't going to have to come in. They can just pick up where Marika has left off. And, you know, again, planning board also agreed that was a great first start. So I think we're in a fairly good position. I know, Marty, I see you're going to hit that button. So I will let you do that.
And just to ask Mr. Wood, I think you and I spoke a couple of weeks ago about whether or not, it wasn't about this issue, but whether or not the grant money could be extended past June 30th. And it cannot. Okay. All right. That was my only question.
So based on that, I think I'd like to kind of take a poll of the board here. If for this particular issue, there's other issues that we have to discuss, but to move on from this issue, and if we come out that something can't be done or whatnot, then again, we can figure out our next path, and whether it is, as maybe Marika suggested, that we just don't have the design guidelines as we move forward. So again, if Andrew, you look like you're ready to hit the button. So just to get a, yeah, so no, it's fine. Just, I'd like to know if the board is in agreement to move forward while there's still grant money for the next 8 days, and try to find a path and a way to create.
So it sounds like the EDC, you are in favor of the path that Lisa is suggesting here. Is that?
I was going to go to them.
Okay. I just wanted to get their input on it.
Yes and no. I don't think the design, I think it would be great if we can get somebody to give a quick draft of the design guidelines before town meeting to have it there. Do I think it's a great thing that we should have? Did we think of that back in November and send it to planning? Yes. But do I think that it makes it, this is me personal, I can hit everybody else afterwards. Do I think that it's imperative to have the design guidelines approved at town meeting with it? No, because it says on the draft that planning board may approve, may use, implement a design guideline. I've been saying a long time that I don't think that was the EDC's purview. We're not planning. We don't, that's not our profession. I would assume that our planning board would want to actually have that in them handle writing it. So it's how they craft it is how that they want to enforce it. I guess I was wrong. I will try. I think we got a shot at getting these out as a draft, because Marika did, I think, a pretty good job at doing it from the beginning. It's not like we're inventing the wheel again. So do I think we got a shot? But let me ask you this, say we can't get somebody to write that. Would you guys move, but we come to every agreement on this bylaw besides that draft and possibly the map? Because as I've been saying since the get-go, I know it's coming up in a different part. I've been saying from the get-go, the map is the map is the map. There's not that much different that can be done with this bylaw that can't be done now. You know, it's very, very similar. So you'd think that the planning board, which I've said to them over and over, would want to handle the map and the design guide. I would assume most planning boards do in other communities that we've talked to and things like that. So yeah, I think I agree we can try, but my question is, if we can't get that a consultant to draft it, would you move forward with that? That's the key question. Otherwise, we're wasting our time. I think we've got a good product. I think there's 4 issues that I think we can all cut, that this board and us can come to agreement very simply. Do I think planning will do it? Don't know. Maybe, maybe not. So That's my thought. I think we have a good document that everybody's worked out. Like you said, we've got 8, 9 versions. That shows due diligence. We're down to the final, couple of things. And then all of a sudden, a design guideline that we gave them back in November becomes an issue at 4 o'clock, the night of the meeting. And we just got to see the letter now. I'm sorry if I come across frustrated, but I really am. So my question is I think we could move forward. I'd like to, hammer out these last 4 issues tonight on that document at least, and we'll try to get it done with the grant money. I don't see it being a very expensive issue to get it crafted if we could. And, I'll see what we have in the EDC budget left over or anything like that, but I'm sure we could find money somewhere if we have to. But what a waste that we have free money. Well, it's not free money. We paid for it already. We have this money, and the last minute we find out, oh, hey, we need that. This town has spent a ton of money on reports for master plan, 2008 housing plan, and they're all saying the same thing. Zoning needs to be changed. Yet here we are, last minute, trying to get it through.
Okay, thank you, John. Does anybody want to piggyback on that, or did he kind of cover it, Julie? Yeah, no, go ahead.
So I am more of the opinion that I strongly prefer to have the design guidelines with the bylaw. The email states that the planning board will review but not create the design guidelines. They've already been created in a draft that's been available, and that the planning board has said, is a good start. So I'm not sure what the review holdup is. Again, Marika and our committee could scramble, and we will, to try to find somebody to do this. Everybody's very busy these days. It's a tough time of year. And I'm sure that's true, particularly for a lot of these consultants, because we're not the only person on this budget cycle. Maybe we can get someone to do a quick review, provide some comments or feedback, give a few hours. I don't think that that's impossible, but I think that that's sort of besides the point. And I think, I'd love to hear what you as the Board of Selectmen think the next steps are or directives are. And if the planning board is not going to, or does not intend to take the helm on this, again, then who will? And I think the design guidelines are important. I mean, my concern is going to town meeting and people saying, well, how can we vote on this? And we need a 2/3 majority. And that's all.
Or did you want to go just? I think he's a comment.
Well, it's probably somewhat of a comment, somewhat of a question. Both John and Julie make very good points. Whether intended as a 8 days before the funding runs out roadblock, or it just is the reality that that's what's happening. We've got the 4 items you identified, Lisa. 3 of them, I suspect we could probably resolve tonight.
Agreed.
Okay. The 4th one is the map. Yep. All right. The map's got nothing to do with the design guidelines.
Right.
So it just strikes me that if we have if we can reach resolution on those 3 issues tonight, and we have design guidelines that were created with that bylaw in mind, we're done, except for the map. And so my question is, maybe Mr. Purple, maybe this is a question for town council, but there then would be, with the idea of a special town meeting, there would be a proposed zoning bylaw. The obligation then shifts to the planning board to hold hearings on that. I don't think they can say, well, we don't have a map. There is a map. There's not a revised map. There may or may not be a revised map, depending on what we hear from particular landowners and a process that's ongoing. But wouldn't we be done? We would have a proposed zoning bylaw, and we would have again. I find it. Not sure what I find it, but most of the courses I sat in on for putting together zoning for various towns in Massachusetts, the planning board was the leader, both in the zoning articles and the design bylaw for obvious reasons. They're the ones who have the primary, I don't even want to say enforcement, but oversight responsibility for those. But if they're not going to do that, then we will. It just strikes me. And again, it just seems to me that we have 3 issues. I think we can probably resolve them tonight. We've already got guidelines. We're done. We're done. And there's a map. There may or may not be revised. If they need a map, we'll send them the map. That's the map right now. To be continued as part of the whole process. But wouldn't we be done?
And you're right. I mean, we have a package that can work. It may get modified going forward.
Right, that's the purpose of the public hearing.
Exactly, yeah.
So I don't disagree with that path, Marty. I would just like to see if there's something we can do in 8 days to just have the design guidelines looked at. I think it's partly due diligence, and I think we've made every effort to do that. And I agree with you. Once that takes place, and once we work through what some of the outstanding issues are, we're done.
The only thing I'm worried about, Lisa, is that we're not meeting again until July 13th. What I would like to do is have closure tonight. So closure to the extent, if we can't, we can't, but closure on the bylaw,
yep.
Closure on the design guidelines. And if we want to do it to the extent they can be, and appoint, designate you and Julie or John as the point persons for the Board of Selectmen and the EDC, but so we don't have to wait till July 13th. Because the clock is ticking. We're talking about October. Well, we're going to talk about that later, are we?
Yep.
It's on the agenda. But move it forward and not take this as a month delay in things. We've got a bylaw. Let's see if we can finalize it tonight. We've got guidelines. They've already been vetted through the planning board. If we can burnish them a little bit in the days we have left with money, great. And not have to come back before the Board of Selectmen for another vote. That's my view on this whole thing. Get it moving.
So I think that was the hope, Marty, was the whole point of tonight, was to be able to put to bed these final issues, take the document, say, this is a document we're going to bring forward for review to planning board. I think the design standards is almost separate from version 8 or whatever version we're on. I think it's separate. I mean, we want them to be in conjunction, but again, I agree with your point that if we can work with somebody and get something done and give me as chair the authority for the board to, if we get something, to just say, okay, we're done, it's part of the packet, and we move on. I completely agree with you. This has gone on for a long time, and we've all worked very hard together to try to move this forward. So I completely.
Selectman Stivers was chirping in my ear accurately that the map issue, I just don't think is an issue. It's just not an issue. It's not an issue in terms of getting this on the plate for public hearing. And in fact, we'll hear from folks as part of the public hearing, and presumably the bylaw may be burnished and amended from what comes out of here. Same thing with the design reviews, and same thing with the map. But that's the package. It's ready to go.
Sorry, I know we kind of cut you off, so go ahead.
Yeah, never let me get the microphone, Rob. You learn that lesson.
I did not want to add anything more beyond the fact that it's oftentimes much easier changing the guidelines voted on at the planning board level than it is for zoning. And if we can fix the zoning, those guidelines will be much easier to adapt going forward than it will be trying to do zoning again. There have been years put in, there have been master plans written in 2008 and 2021 that are going to hit upon the mixed use and the development that should happen there. We've got a product, as I've heard multiple times, and adopting and changing the guidelines can happen as a living document much easier than the zoning can. So that was just kind of what I was going to bring and add. Thank you.
Okay, Andrew, did you want to add something? You look like you did before we move on and go to the 3. I think as far as the design guidelines, I think we have a path. And go ahead.
Yeah, I have a question. It's a process question that is related to a point Marty made, and frankly, I probably should know this, but so our board comes to an agreement, this is a bylaw, we like it, then the planning board hearings are noticed, public hearing. In the course of the planning board public hearings, can the planning board make revisions, line by line revisions to the draft and then say we support it, but with this revision? Or is it not amendable in the course of the planning board public hearing?
My understanding is that's the point of the public hearings, to be able to take input and make changes as need be. Where you, I think, run into issues is when you get to the printing of the warrant, if you haven't taken the suggestions and the revisions that are done at that point, then you're looking at amendments on town meeting floor. Julie, do you want to add anything to that? I think that pretty much summed it up.
So the planning board in the course of their public hearing would say, no, we want to change this, and then our board would take a vote on whether we support it as amended, and it would be.
Yeah, it's similar to what happened through. Sorry, thank you. Similar to what happened through the process that we started before we indefinitely postponed for last town meeting. There were public hearings held, there were comments made, planning board. That's where we came up with some of the concerns that the planning board had that we worked towards addressing were through those public hearings. So yes, so there's definitely the time, and I think it's a matter of getting them. I believe the cutoff date, depending on when we go through with town meeting for posting, they would need something final if we went with, again, I'm just throwing a date out there, end of September, with the postings that need to take place. You're probably looking at a mid-July. So it is imperative that we can move forward as much as we can. And that's why, again, this meeting tonight took place so we could input. Go ahead, Marty.
I think, Andrew, Lisa, I think that a zoning article is proposed. It can either be signed off on in toto by the planning board and nothing changes. It can be amended in time for it making onto the warrant, so that you've got the amended warrant that goes for the special town meeting or a town meeting. And you can have it amended too late. So you've got your original warrant article with the zoning, and then you thrash it out at town meeting like you would any other proposed amendments. I think those are the fourth possibility is that it gets trashed so badly that you abandon ship. But I think those are the three primary responsibility, and Lisa's right. I think it's a matter of timing. And so that again reinforces the need to do this as quickly as possible.
Agreed. So that being said, I think we have a path on the guidelines. Let's talk about the 2,000, 3,000 for the establishment. It's under permitted uses by special permit, page 3. It would be 174,812 C1. So one of the recommendations from planning board, I know they had a lot of discussion on this, is they've gone back and forth a little bit on the 3,000 per establishment versus 2,000. The current bylaw for consistency, that's one of the things I've heard, and Julie, you can again jump in to add to this, was for consistency, they'd like it to stay the 2,000. But based on what we're trying to do, and and I think Marika has detailed it pretty well in what was provided to the board. It didn't make our packet. It was too late for the packet. So, yeah. Okay, perfect. Thank you, Marika. So I think it's, and again, maybe Jen, I'll let you talk to this because you or Julie, because we talked about OLA briefly, just to give the board some perspective. So I'm going to mute you guys on.
You guys' perspective on size. Judy, I always confuse Judy and Julie, so I may say that backwards, and I apologize. I'll do that at least once, I guarantee.
Julie's right there.
Thank you. So Judy had said 3,000, and she had, I forget exactly why, but to give you an idea of size, all is only 1,500 square feet, and they're very, very small. The Vin Bin is 2,600 square feet. And these Tomaso's is much bigger, they're like 37, but Cold Stone, 1,500, and Starbucks, 1,600 square feet. Those are pretty small spaces to have any type of a retail in, especially like Ola. 1,500 square feet, even, you know, with the tent out, even that's what, another 500, that would put them over 2,000 square feet with just having their tent out. So I'd like to stay with, I think 3,000 is reasonable. I understand for consistency, but you know, I believe it was Adam Costa that said, you know, you don't have to have consistency to it, but I'll let Judy, see, I told you I was gonna do it. I will let Julie speak on that.
Sure. So the threshold, and again, this is a threshold per establishment as opposed to a threshold per building. So regardless, if there's, you know, if there's a building that's proposed, that's going to have to go through the special permit process and a building permit process and all of those things. So that is separate. So this is just for a particular use of an establishment. Whether the threshold for the extra level of review for the permitted uses only should be 2,000 square feet or 3,000 square feet. This was an issue when we first approached the planning board back 3-ish years ago now. And we thought naively at the time that, you know, a simple way to amend their mixed use zoning bylaw was to take the existing mixed use zoning bylaw that had a lot of very antiquated uses that were very out of date and not comporting with the 21st century or partly the 20th century, and add as a component of it residential use, so that a business and a residence could share the same building. But when the only other change that we made at that time that we requested of the planning board was a change to the threshold of the size of the establishment. Because we, even at that time, before we even delved too far into the research, and our research has confirmed this, 2,000 square feet for an establishment seemed very small and seemed to undercut the by right nature of the uses. And again, the by right is only for the uses, not for the building or anything else. So if we're saying we want restaurants, we want a brew pub, we want small scale retail, we want a coffee shop, you know, 2,000 square feet might undermine our attempts, and we've put a lot of effort into this to encourage certain uses, particularly restaurant use. John mentioned Ola is less than 2,000 square feet, but we know how teeny tiny that is. And if you look at something like Tomaso, that's 3,700 square feet. Again, with a 3,000 foot threshold, a Tomaso sized restaurant would still require that extra level of approval. Vin Bin is 2,600 square feet, that, you know, depending on the threshold. So it's just thinking about, if we're saying these are the uses we want, and these uses might be over, you know, or likely going to be over 2,000 square feet, it really undermines the point of the bylaw if we restrict too much. If we're saying the point of this is we want to encourage certain types of small businesses, let's do that. The most recent comment that I heard from the planning board is that 2,000 is consistent with other limitations in town. I don't think that argument is particularly pertinent here, because we're saying we're treating downtown differently because we want to encourage certain uses. We know that downtown as a business village district should be treated differently, and that's why we're going through this very long and cumbersome exercise. So I think 2,000 is small. I'm curious as to how the board feels about that, but you know, I would certainly you know, encourage everyone to keep it 3,000 or somewhere over 2,000. 2,000 seems very small. Thank you, Julie. Mr. Healy.
Yeah, if Tomaso's is 3,700 and Vin Bin is 2,600, those are both over 2,000. So where are the 2,000 limits? Where do they exist?
We're 2,000 square.
Yeah, in other words, the notion is that.
Yeah.
So there were special permits needed for Tomaso's and for Vin Bin? Okay. Okay.
So we're
All right.
relaxing that restriction here. It would be 3,000.
Right.
Which I think makes sense.
Yeah. Okay. But it wouldn't, and the difference between 2,000 and 3,000 is not something you're going to be able to tell from the street. It's simply the size, whether or not there's a wall inside.
Yeah.
And, or where the wall is inside, but the size of the building would be controlled elsewhere. Okay, all right, I got it.
Andrew? Sam?
Yeah, I'm fine with 3,000 here.
Chelsea?
Yeah, I mean, I was just looking at the map that Marika provided, and yeah, I mean, now that I look at Ola, and that's 12, I mean, that would fit this, but that is tiny. So I understand the challenge with going to 2,000. So I think was the 3,000 what we agreed to in the November joint meeting? Did we have consensus around the 3?
I think we did.
Yeah, okay, okay, thank you.
And again, so again, we've kind of talked about it's got to go through a process. It's got to go through a planning board process, and I believe they have to write a report for town meeting as well. So let's go ahead, Marty.
Yeah, I move that for purposes of the downtown district, what would this be, version 9? But for the one that we make our final version, that we adopt 3,000 square feet per establishment. Under C, what is that? Under 174.8.12 C paren 1, that we adopt 3,000 square feet. That's my motion.
Sorry, hold on, I think it's B, right? Permitted uses?
Nope. It's special permit. Next page. If you go.
So,
No, you would have it in
wait, I thought we were talking about by right, or not?
That is by right. Your permitted use is up to a maximum of the 3,000.
Yeah.
Special permits over
And then
3,000.
you would also make the same, you have the same square foot in C1.
Oh, wait a minute. People have mics on and off. Sorry. So I'm gonna shut mine off. Andrew, go ahead. And then we'll come back.
You would have the same figure in C1, right?
C1 is what my motion was directed towards. If I've got the wrong section and subsection, someone tell me.
I think that was my question.
Okay, sorry.
That was my question. I thought we were talking about permitted uses, and then whatever that maximum number is, then that would be the minimum number on C1. So I think you need to amend your motion.
Do you want to make the motion then? You seem to understand the sections and subsections better than I do.
Do you want to withdraw your motion?
Withdrawn.
Okay, so I'm gonna make a motion that this board adopt under section 174-8.12 B, the 3,000 square foot for permitted use, as well as under C1, the 3,000 being the lower part of the threshold for special permit.
Second.
Roll call? Not roll call. Sorry. Show of hands. Those in favor? Those against? John, do you want to take a motion with your board as well? Make sure you have the mic on.
You want to make a motion, Austin?
Yeah, make a motion that the Economic Development Committee under section 174-8.12 B for permitted uses have the number in there as 3,000 square feet, as well as underneath section C1 for special permit, 3,000 square feet.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Chris. Any discussion? All in favor? That's unanimous. Thank you. One down.
All right. We are both in session, yes.
Okay.
They did call the meeting to order at 6:30, Betsy. Yep. So the board, Betsy, We list it as review and discussion. It's how it's always been done in the past. We don't list necessarily as a joint meeting. Okay, so next, let's go to page 4 under G, special permit for height increase. Another concern that planning board had was the 4 stories. We don't even allow 4 stories on Route 9 currently. So to me, this one's pretty easy to fix. We would need to lower the feet. I believe in the current bylaw, it's 35 feet. I believe it is. We don't have to go. I think they were talking about a 40-foot threshold. So if a 40-foot 3-story, so actually we could just take this special permit for 4 right off, just delete G.
Delete G, and then in 8A, take out the part after the comma.
8A. Yes. Yep. So Andrew, you just said that great. Why don't you, I'm muted, I'm not muted. Go ahead and would you make the motion, please, sir?
I move that the Board of Selectmen support eliminating section 174-8.12 G together with the portion of section 174-8.12 F8A after the comma following 3 stories.
Second.
Opposed? John, do you guys want to make the same?
Second.
Yeah. Yeah. So, the EDC, making zoning recommendation changes to section 174-8.12, section, section G, the removal of that, as well as subsection 8A, the removal of everything after the comma, stories comma.
Do I? Any discussion? All in favor? Pass it unanimously.
All right, that leads us to what is my third issue? Yep, the FAR. So we've had a lot of discussion on this. I will say that when we had the joint meeting in November, we did reach consensus with planning board for 0.35 up to 5. I know some people would like to see it larger. I think we had a lot of discussion around that as well. I think that in the packet that Mr. Purple asked after this meeting, if we could get this posted online as well, because it didn't make the public. Oh, Andrew, your mic is open, sorry. Your mic is open. Sorry, thank you. So my suggestion would be based on the discussions we had and the level of discussion and where we had consistency. My suggestion, and again, this is only mine, would be to go back to where we were in November at a 0.35 up to 0.5. So that's a suggestion that's open for discussion by the board, but
Lisa, I've actually waffled on this myself. I looked at the lot coverage numbers, and I think there are pluses and minuses with both, but I think that the FAR 0.35 with a special permit up to 0.5 actually does most of what we need. The only concern I have is that under certain hypothetical and I think pretty unlikely circumstances, maybe somebody could put together a sizable parcel and potentially create a large building on there. I think that's pretty unlikely. On the other hand, one thing that we might, I'm fine with starting with the 0.35 and 0.50, but as we go through the planning board process, maybe have a consideration of a sliding scale. So for larger parcels, you might want to cut back on that FAR sum to limit the bulk and size of the structure that might be built there, as I've heard people express concern about that. But for now, at least, I think that 0.35 and 0.5 are reasonable way to go.
Thank you, Sam. And again, it also has to go through the planning board public hearings as well. So, Andrew?
Lisa, I think I support what you're suggesting here, because it's got some, for the sake of simplicity. There's only so much time we can delve into this. But I do think Sam makes a good point. Within the limited time we've got available, I support what you're suggesting here to go to the 0.35, maximum 0.5 by special permit.
Mr. Healy?
So moved.
Thank you. Ms. Malinowski?
I think where we had consensus on this in November, I think that's why I asked about the 3,000 square foot too. I think it makes the most sense. I think the maximum lot coverage would be really difficult given just the varying size parcels that are in that area. So I'm in agreement with what you suggested.
Okay, so EDC, that's where the board is. If you guys want to discuss amongst yourselves as well, I think we're fairly consistent on this. Go ahead.
Sure, and I certainly respect the board's decision, and I have in every point I've certainly deferred to the consensus from our initial meeting back in November. However, on this point in particular, I don't think, at least personally, I don't think I understood exactly what FAR meant at that time. I've learned a lot more about it since then. I'd like to think that it's possible a lot of people didn't really understand what that meant. So I think the visual that Marika put together is pretty instrumental, because if you think about a 0.35 FAR, that means if you take a 1 acre lot, that 35% of it can, if you have a 1-story building, 35% of that lot can be used as the footprint of the building. If you had a 2-story building, that means that only 17% of the lot is the footprint of the building. If you have a 3-story building, it's about 11%, right? So now you have what sort of looks like a skyscraper, a mini skyscraper on this lot. So you've got a big lot, and then you've got this skinny, tall building. I don't think that visually that's the look that we are going for. I also want to add that in speaking with Judy Barrett, she does not recommend FAR for downtown village districts. She does recommend a lot coverage, a lot coverage metric. And the reason is, she says that you can, we already have language in there that requires a certain amount of green space. Obviously there's parking regulations and other things too. So the building size by its nature is going to be constricted out by other things. And again, I want to move this forward and I want consensus. I don't think a 0.35, I think that, I don't think that's the right number for a starting point. And, I would like to see a little bit more discussion on this, because I don't think that's the look that we're going for. I'll add one more thing very briefly, because, we're trying to, maximize the utility of the funding that we have available. We are meeting with a design architect who put together the renderings that we had previously put together a couple of years ago. And we're going to work with him, hopefully very quickly, to try to put together what these metrics would look like if they are maxed out. So we can show, because I know one of the points that some comments have been made are that the visuals that we put together a few years ago before we had numeric metrics are very beautiful, but do they match up with these numbers, these standards? So we're going to hopefully implement that to show what the maxed out standards would look like on a lot. But yeah,
just can you mute just for a second? So another reason why I support the FAR is this has been pitched up along a small scale mixed use development. The original renderings that went out were small scale with green space, and I understand there's a 20% open space requirement in this, But when you start looking at some of these lots and what a 0.35 up to a 0.5 could do, it doesn't represent the small scale that we've talked about, the mom and pop bakeries, the little this or that. So, well, I completely appreciate what you're saying, Julie. I believe that with the 0.35 and the 0.5, so I'll respectfully disagree. How's that with you? But I appreciate what you're saying as well. Marty?
Yeah, and Julie, I guess what I'd say is you make a very good point. It's a point that can be made between now and the special town meeting. I'm not ready to. I think it's important, and we've been pretty consistent about staying with what we thought everybody had agreed to in the fall, and we had agreed to this proposal as well in the fall after whatever it was 2 or 3 meetings.
Yeah.
So I'm more comfortable sticking with that at this point, but we've got between now and the special town meeting. I'm looking at these pictures, and Marika, they are compelling to look like. Are we spiting our nose for our face here by being restrictive about the initial footprint, but as you go to 2 stories, you're creating something that we wouldn't want to see. And I just don't know off the top of my head whether or not there's a way to address that from a language standpoint. That being I suspect there is. That being the case, I'm comfortable sticking with what Lisa has proposed, which is what was agreed upon after our joint meetings with the planning board in the fall. I guess that's where I end up right now. But we've got between now and special town meeting. Again, the idea of this is to get it right. And we've got between now and special town meeting. If it turns out this isn't what's right for what we want to try to accomplish in the downtown district, then we amend it.
If I may, the ability to have some flexibility for the developer coming in is something that we want to do. And so even though there's a special permit component to it, at least they'll have the opportunity to make a proposal and put the burden on the planning board to make that choice. So I think, with the numbers that you had suggested, it actually makes sense. And it puts some, weight on those people who are going to have to make the decision. And so, what we want are more conversations with developers. And so if there are concessions for uses and by right things that we can give to the development community, it could start those conversations so that when they come in with something that's slightly different, we still have the special permit authority, the planning board, to kind of work on the town's behalf. So I think to your point, the 0.35 as right with the opportunity and flexibility to 0.5 might be the best scenario in this case.
And when Marty always says, don't give up the good.
Right, Sam, go ahead.
Julie makes a good point. I understand that certainly. I also appreciate Marty's comment that we've got time to work on this. My concern is that with the lot coverage numbers that we've been talking about, I think you wind up with potential for substantially larger buildings on a particular parcel if you do the math. And that's one thing that I'm interested in making sure we guard against. So I think, again, to Rob's point too, it gives the developers options here, some flexibility in the planning board to negotiate with the FAR range. So I think that overall is a reasonable combination, not perfect, but to me, it's the best we can do in terms of what we're trying to accomplish. So I'm comfortable.
Andrew, do you want to add anything?
No.
Okay, so I think we're all right, Mr. Healy, you're so great with these motions.
Maybe maybe I'm just thick on this, but the specific provision that we're talking about is
Not in here.
that.
I think
As stated,
yes. I brought one of the old drafts.
Yeah.
B5.
Oh, under,
Yeah, I'm ready to go. I'm ready to
I know, I
make a
forgot.
motion, but I need numbers and letters.
Give it a crib sheet.
Okay, look at this.
All right.
Well, I think Mr. Dennington,
Should make the motion.
Well, we have to think it through first, so.
This is the language from like 2 versions ago, I think.
Before I make a motion, I just think it through here. So the maximum lot coverage, and looking at V8. On page 4 at the top, says maximum lot coverage 80%, right?
Correct.
So that's the thing that we would want to.
We want to reinsert the language.
Yep, so I am reading from, this is from V5.
Yep.
It says Judy Bear comments 2/22/21.
Yep.
PB comments from 2/11/21. Okay. The language there was, instead of saying maximum lot coverage, it said maximum floor area ratio, 0.35 as of right, comma, or a maximum of 0.50 by special permit from the planning board. So that's what.
Yes.
And we also need to define floor area ratio, which we had the definition previously.
And that's, maybe that was in something that was after V5.
I think we want to define it, but maybe that's common enough that people know what it is. I'm not sure.
I'm looking at a definitional section. I just don't, again, it is, there've been so many versions of this, and obviously we want to make sure we get it. There is a definition for floor area ratio with 4 subsections. This ratio is constant for a zone. That's 1, 2. A floor area ratio of 1.0 means that floor area may equal lot area. 3, and FAR 2.0 means that the floor may be up to 2 times as large as the lot area. And FAR 0.5 means that the floor area may be more than half the lot area. Now that sounds instructive, not definitional. Yeah.
So, what we can do is, Andrew, I will have in my conversation with Judy tomorrow, shoot over her definition for FAA. The board is, willing, if it makes sense, I'll talk to Julie and John, and we can approve the definition. And again, if it's not what the board wants, we can certainly through the public hearing process make a change. But in order to,
So do you think we need to have a definition of FAR now, or? I don't think we need to. So let's just.
FAR to be defined.
I believe, and this would have to be confirmed, but I believe that there's already a definition for floor area ratio in our zoning.
I wondered about that. Okay.
And it basically is the ratio of the aggregate gross floor area of all the floors of the building or buildings on a lot to the total lot area. The gross floor area shall not include unenclosed porches, cellars, attics, or garages not used for human occupancy. That's already in the zoning.
That's already in the
So we might not need to do that and just refer to floor area ratio.
So I can just maybe talk out the form of the motion, and then if it's wrong, someone can, does that sound good?
You got it.
So I'm going to suggest that at top of page 4, so this is section 174-8.12 F5, that we strike maximum lot coverage 80% and instead replace that with maximum floor area ratio colon 0.35 as of right, or a maximum of 0.5 by special permit from the planning board.
Yes.
Second.
All in favor? opposed? So. EDC?
Well, we're gonna, maybe make a move.
Uh,
What he said, no.
Yeah.
Are we then gonna take these into are all these votes gonna be put into a new version? Okay.
Yep. So I make a motion to amend the zoning bylaw draft 174-8, that period 1, 2 for section F, number 5, and replace maximum lot coverage 80% with, a floor area ratio, max floor area ratio, colon 0.35 as a right, comma, or a maximum of 0.5 by special permit from the planning board.
Okay, all in favor? All opposed?
All right, so I think we have a path forward, like Marty said.
Process question. Now, if we could sway you during the public hearings, it can be changed potentially.
Yes.
Yeah. Just trying to piece. And if we could, once we have the renderings.
And as far as, Sam, go ahead.
Can I ask another question?
Sure.
Am I assuming that we are also supporting the changes in blue in this draft that we got?
Correct.
It looked to me like what Attorney Costa recommended. I think that's very useful.
Yes.
So do we need to vote on that or?
Certainly vote on that.
Okay.
That will complete the
Yeah,
document.
right.
So, okay, Dan, you just made a great motion.
Okay, I'll move that we support the changes made in the V8 version in the blue print to clarify several of the definitional issues here, as shown in this particular document.
You're going to withdraw your motion, right?
Of course, that's just what I was thinking about.
You read my. I think instead what we should do is accept for purposes of transmitting to the planning board, South Road Downtown District version 8 as amended with the blue amendments as a result of the input from Attorney Costa and members of the planning board, as well as the reflecting votes taken on items 1, 2, and 3.
Second, just what I was going to say.
Sorry.
Okay, so we've had a motion, we've had a second discussion. All in favor? All right, thank you.
My next motion is that along with version 8 that we just voted on, that we transmit the, what do you call them? Draft design guidelines to the planning board as part of this package, with the proviso that we designate Ms. Braccio on behalf of the Board of Selectmen to make any changes after input from a consultant between now and the end of our consultancy pay.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor? All opposed? Okay,
I have one more motion.
all right.
I move that as part of the package, that package to be transmitted to the planning board, we include the current zoning map for the downtown district as it exists in the town of Southborough. Not part of my motion, but the understanding is that remains a topic of discussion. But for purposes of transmission, the current map will be the one that goes.
Second.
Can I ask a question on that? So procedurally, what are the next steps for the map? So I understand your motion and I support that we should move forward with that, but what, is this going to be part of the hearing process or okay. Yep.
So, Andrew, go ahead.
So Marty, what you're suggesting is if someone wanted to change the map, they would put it to the planning board would do it? That's what you're saying.
Talk about it at the hearing. Planning board hearing.
Correct.
Not only that, I don't, what we are proposing is a zoning article. We've voted on that, and that's being transmitted to the planning board. This is my view. But I think legally I'm correct about this. That's the thing that will be on the warrant for town meeting, that proposed zoning article. The design guidelines are not going to be on.
I was talking about the map, not.
I understand. No, I understand. So the design guidelines are not part of the article, other than the fact that they're referenced in the warrant article. The same thing for purposes of the map. What the planning board has asked for is that in order for them to consider the proposed zoning article, they also need the map. Right now, there is a map, so all we can do is transmit that map.
Okay.
That doesn't mean it can't be changed. Doesn't mean it can't be changed with proposals from us, from the EDC, from the public, from the planning board. But the concern is that there is a logjam. The logjam is that the planning board has said in order for them to have the public hearings, they need three things. They need the proposed article, they need the proposed design guidelines, and they need the map. We only have one map right now.
Andrew, I'm just going to ask in between, you have to mute. It's just feedback.
Sorry. Well, I think, at a prior meeting, I'd asked how simple or easy is it to change the boundaries of the map. And if it really is just as simple as we could take this map right now and just.
The problem is changing the boundaries of the map are easy, but changing them with the input from folks who are going to be impacted by it and other folks who might have a view, that's the more difficult thing. That's not something that's going to be done by July 13th. It's probably not something that's going to be done by whatever our meeting is in August. And I just don't want to see the process of review for the zoning article and for the design guidelines held up because there has to be an additional ongoing process involving the map. It's going to be part of the public hearings. It should be part of the public hearings.
I think that as I followed this discussion, right, I think it did take on kind of a different character when focus started to be paid attention to the map and some of the split lots, and it's never been the intention of this zoning proposal to intensify uses for parcels that face Lattisquama Road. And if we could take a position on that we would support this downtown, this business village district, excluding the parts of the split lots that are in that southern part, I think that could help to build some public support for it. And in each of the votes that we've taken so far, I think we've been cognizant of how the visuals are important, particularly at the special town meeting where there's going to be PowerPoint and stuff like that. This map, I completely agree with you. It's right now, some of those split lots have this, they theoretically could try to pursue commercial development in the back parcel. It probably wouldn't get very far. But so I would be in favor of taking a position now on restricting the boundaries of the map. And I also think that when you say, it would be important to get input from people who, you would get input from people who currently have split lots and would be upset that their lots wouldn't be able to be developed as intensely. So you could have, which would you rather have? People who would be complaining that this restricted their availability to make commercial development on those lots, or to, so I think that's an accommodation that would be a good one to make.
Wouldn't that be what you do through the public hearing? Hear from everybody.
Andrew, I don't disagree with anything you said, but that's not going to, getting that map done is not going to be done tonight. Again, we didn't create this time crunch. It was created for us. And we're trying to address that. The other thing we can do, honestly, is to send along the, not send along a map at this point. I mean, it's perfectly reasonable that the zoning bylaw and the design guidelines can be considered as they exist, and work will continue by us and others on the map. It's a separate, it would be a separate article. Andrew, what map are we voting on to do what you're saying to accomplish? There isn't one.
We could take it right here and just draw the boundaries and take out the split lots.
So if I can just, Andrew, I'm gonna have you mute for 1 second. So, and John, you can jump in on this, or Julie. So EDC has had some level of conversations with some of the split lot owners, and the majority of them do not want to see a change. Is that incorrect? So for again, not having the homeowner here and to chop out part of their lot, I think is premature. That's just my opinion, Andrew. I think through the process, these homeowners will also have a voice at the planning board, as will other people have a voice that may have concerns about those lots. I think I'm not comfortable with the map is the map of what it is today. What they can do today is what they can do tomorrow with what we're submitting. And again, it's subject to change. John, go ahead.
Process question. So I agree with you. Just want to say that, you know, with it, but my question is this, so we present this package now as is, leaving the map as the map is the map, because honestly, again, there's nothing really that can be done tomorrow with this bylaw that can't be done today with what we have written. So the map, regardless of whether this passes or not, in my personal opinion, needs to be addressed. That Dave may disagree with me, but the map is the map, and it needs to be addressed regardless. So going through the public hearings and with planning is going to hear, you know, the residents, the abutters, the stakeholders, everybody in town, and really get a good feel for it. Now, I'm assuming planning would then take charge of fixing the map the way that they want to, or at least, I would hope, let them say, hey, we think this map needs to be changed to this. You need to get rid of these split lots, or they're going to do nothing with it, and they're the ones that need to enforce it. So I think my question is, so we'll plan, like, once we go through the public hearing, and, you know, I'm assuming residents are going to come out and say pros and cons. Who takes charge of rewriting that map after that? I'm assuming it's planning.
I don't have an answer for that question.
Julia.
So Mr. Haley, you said that, you know, you're concerned about the map creating a logjam, and I think it already has. We have had a substantive bylaw that has been through several public hearings for months on end. We all sat through every other Monday. It continued on the agenda. Almost nothing of substance in the metrics or the design guidelines were ever discussed in any of those meetings, except for the map. It usurped hours and hours of my time, of everyone's time, of the board's time, for weeks on end, to the point where we never discussed it ever. And it's clearly an issue. And the message that we got from planning board was, EDC, do something about it. We don't have the authority to do anything about it. So I'm feeling kind of stuck and feeling like this map issue is really undermining this efforts that we've all put years of blood, sweat, and tears into. So I don't know what the right answer is, but I certainly can't do it. I don't have the authority to do that. The EDC doesn't have the authority to bring a motion to town meeting, to bring an article to town meeting. We can't do that unless we did a citizens petition, but that doesn't make sense either. So I really do. I appreciate Andrew's comment, Mr. Dennington's comment, because I think we do need some guidance on this path forward, because what's going to happen, we can send this package to planning board, but I guarantee, I mean, and it's not just at planning board meetings, it's been at our meetings too. They've been overtaken by this question of the map, and I don't know what to do about it, because I'm with John. I don't disagree, but I also completely agree with Lisa that it's very presumptuous to just say, we're going to change your property owner's map. And so until, unless the board formally reaches out to these people, we've done it sort of on an informal basis through folks that Marika has just known personally. But I really think what I'm hearing, and I heard Mr. Healy address this at the last planning board meeting too, there seems to be, the ball keeps getting kicked back and forth. And I keep hearing the planning board saying, well, you go do something about it. But to my understanding, and I'm not an expert in this area, but it's the planning boards, it should be the planning board that would change the map. And it seems to be an issue that they're very concerned about, because it's not just members of the public who have addressed it. The planning board members themselves have made this a very, very prominent issue in this whole debate. So I really am concerned that without some real, explicit guidance, that we're just going to continue to run around in circles.
Go ahead, Marika.
I just wanted to say that I totally agree with.
Sorry, closer. I want to make sure the public can hear you.
Yeah. I'll just sit down here. I'm good. I totally agree with Julie. And I feel we've lost a lot of time where we discuss the map and not the bylaw. If you actually read the bylaw very carefully, we are proposing not such great changes. We're just allowing for by right uses in our downtown. I also want to say that split lots are common throughout the United States. They're very common throughout Massachusetts. It's not something unique to Southborough. And this bylaw that we're proposing doesn't change anything. It doesn't change, it doesn't make developers be able to do things that they currently can't do. No one has come in and tried to buy those lots. Or I mean, there's like a whole, and I think Attorney Adam Costa during one of the meetings basically listed all the conditions that need to be met before someone can actually do something. So I think this whole map discussion should be not had during a zoning update bylaw meeting. We should, it's a completely separate issue. If the planning board wants to address that, I'm sure it's not just the downtown business village district. There might be, there are other areas. Route 9 has split lots. The other villages have split lots. They could go and have a look, and they should speak with the actual owners of the split lots, because I've spoken to 6 out of the 7 split lot owners. 5 of them don't want anything changed. 1 of them actually prefers to have their entire lot included in the downtown district. So we can't just go and redraw the map without their approval. But I think we should just shut down this discussion about the map and just, deal with that on a separate, in a separate topic.
I'm going to have you mute,
Thank you.
Marika. So, sorry. John, can you hit the?
Oh, sorry.
There you go. So I think what's in the downtown village, what's currently in the zoning includes that map. All we're looking to do is upgrade the zoning at this point. So for discussion tonight, I strongly urge this board to just use the map that we currently have. If there is changes or anything between now and town meeting that we can do, or again, anything we want to change, we have the time to do it. I think this bylaw doesn't change. It just gives additional opportunities. I think we're spending a lot more time tonight on this than, and Andrew, I take your point that there is an issue, and I don't think anybody sitting here doesn't think there's some form of issue with the map. But I think we need to move forward, and the public hearings need to start, and that's an opportunity to do it. We'll have an opportunity to weigh in on it as well then.
So let me just throw out an idea, which is, I think Mr. Healy's motion was to transmit the map as is, right? What if we were to do that, transmit the map with the strong suggestion of the Board of Selectmen that when the planning board, in the course of their public hearing, that they give strong consideration to potentially revising the boundaries of the district to address this split lots. I mean, we know that that's totally not binding, but I just think that, and I know you want to move this forward. That's just an idea that I have in mind. It sounds like, Marty, what do you think about that?
The only,
I'm gonna answer you first.
I'm sorry.
No, you're good, Marty. Go ahead.
The only problem I have, Andrew, is I don't know if that's how I feel about it, because the people who own those lots don't want that to happen. They're comfortable with, I mean, they purchased their property. Again, I understand people feel strongly about this on various sides of the issue, but
Could you push them to do their duty and look
the
at-
loudest voices can't make our decision for us. We've got to consider all aspects of this. And for me, the people who own certain property, they are the ones who are going to be most directly affected by this. So I'm not, at the end of the day, I might be convinced that the best thing for the town of Southborough, notwithstanding those landowners, is to adjust the line. I'm not there yet. I'd like to hear from them. We've heard a lot from folks who feel differently. I'd like to hear folks who apparently through Marika are saying, we like our lots the way they are. Now, at the end of the day, not everybody's going to be happy, because either the lots are going to stay the way they are in a proposal, or they're going to change. Not everybody's going to be happy. But I'm not ready to make a decision without hearing all of the voices, not just the loudest voices.
I too want to hear more input through the process.
Agreed. All right. I think Chelsea.
Yeah, I mean, I think I just want to make sure that the public hearings with the planning board are going to incorporate the feedback on this, but at the same time, we address, kind of I think we have one outstanding issue now, except for the map, with planning board, which is the 2,000 versus 3,000. But I just want to make sure that, in their email to us earlier today, it said that they wanted the map addressed. So I think we need clarification around what the expectation is from this board versus planning board, and how the hearings are going to either address it or not. And if, is that going to fall back on us? And if it is, then I think I'd rather know that sooner than later. Go ahead, Eddie.
I guess I agree with you, Chelsea. I think the simple thing is to say that is to transmit this. I mean, there is a zoning article in there. As I said, I'm pretty sure there's a legal requirement that there now be hearings about that zoning article. I think that's a legal requirement for the planning board. They have to have those hearings. I would think, and we can reference this in however we transmit this in the email or otherwise, that we think it's important that there be continuing discussion about the zoning map, that we intend to do it, and we hope they do as well.
Yeah.
Period.
I'm just suggesting is there a way that you incorporate just what you said there into the form of your motion, so that the transmission of this map isn't construed as some official position of the planning board that
of the Board of Selectmen. Okay, then what I just said, I will turn into all of that. So moved.
I think you got to.
Second.
You want to do it again? All right,
Katie's head is spinning over here, so.
Let me see if I can recreate that. That the Board of Selectmen convey to the planning board the proposed zoning article for the downtown district as voted on tonight, along with the draft design guidelines as voted on tonight, along with the message that the Board of Selectmen are continuing review and discussion, including with landowners of the existing zoning map. And we anticipate that discussion of that map will be part of the public hearings regarding the downtown district bylaw that's being proposed.
And the design guidelines as may be modified through subsequent conversation.
I'm leaving my motion as it is.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Discussion? All in favor? Opposed?
Yeah, the EDC makes a motion to submit the package to the planning board for review and keeping the map discussion separate.
Second. Any discussion? No discussion. All in favor? Need a motion to send version 8.
The EDC makes a motion to send version 8 with the changes made
tonight.
Tonight.
And
And the design guidelines as well.
do I have a second? A second that.
So
Any discussion?
may I ask a question on your motion? So the board of selectmen are going to transmit. Sorry.
Oh, yeah, we're not transmitting it.
We're transmitting, so
Yes.
just for clarification. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, support.
To support.
Yeah,
Support the board.
transmission.
Support the
We
transmission.
support you in your transition.
Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Motion carries.
Are you adjourning?
We have to vote now, right? Do we have anything left? Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Need us for anything else?
Second. All right, 9:27.
Are we gonna all in favor?
The board is in recess.
Thank you for having us. Katie, I'll get you some Tylenol.
Sam and Andrew, turn your cameras off. Turn recess.
I text you.
That's being used, but that may be, but it's an issue. Well, it's an, I don't know how it's an issue, but it's not, it's general, it's in the back. But if no, so what it should be in there. So in the terms of gardens, because. And then I hope that they do what's right.
Lisa, thank you so much. Bye, Katie. Good job.
Right. Well, actually, Joanne, take care of me. Look at this. I have all these. Thank you. All right, welcome back, everyone. The board is back from recess. Next item on our agenda Review and approve charge for noise bylaw ad hoc committee. Mr. Stivers?
I made updates based on our conversation last time. There's actually one typo in the 5th bullet point, and the first thing should be report on progress. But other than that, I hope that I captured all the comments, but if not, happy to do additional updates.
Okay, we'll go down the line. We'll start with Mr. Healy.
Yeah, excuse me, I'm sorry. I had one typo. And I'll find it in a second. I'm fine. I agree with Mr. Stivers. He did incorporate at least the things I remembered from our discussion, but I thought I found another typo. While you're talking with other folks, I'll take a quick look again.
Okay, thank you.
I don't have any comments. Thank you, Sam. Good job. And the concerns I had, they're all reflected in this revised draft.
Mr. Healy.
Yeah, what was your typo?
5th bullet, providing periodic reports on progress.
That's the one. Providing periodic progress reports.
Okay.
I think that's what you meant. Okay, that was the same typo.
All right. Ms. Malinowski.
So we had a Board of Health meeting earlier today, and I gave an update on this charge as discussed by this board last week. And the one thing that they brought up that I struggled with, and I told them I'd bring it back, but I don't think there's a way to do it, but I just want this board to be aware. There's a concern with that the Board of Health members, so there's 3 of us, that none of us are at a point where we can actually participate in this committee. Although the Board of Health will have a ex officio on the committee. The suggestion was made that an employee who was also a resident be assigned one of the 5 voting appointments. I just don't see how we would designate that. And I said that we could always encourage her to apply as a resident at large. I just wanted to make sure that this board was aware and that you didn't have any other ideas to accomplish that. The other thing that I will say that I mentioned to them was that it's the genesis of this select board that we put this together based on information given at town meeting, and that we do understand that Board of Health has enforcement related to noise and such, and that, obviously we would take their opinion on whatever was presented by this committee. So I felt comfortable that we could leave as is, but I just wanted to bring it up here.
Chelsea?
Yeah.
Question. That's why I think we put designee in there, so they could actually appoint a designee who is maybe an expert, sound measurement person or whatever, if they were comfortable with something like that. So I think my thought was that gives them a fair amount of flexibility to do whatever would alleviate the concerns they had in terms of technical.
And I agree with you, Sam, and I was very comfortable the Board of Health would be appropriately represented here. I just felt like it was my obligation to bring this back.
Okay, so I am fine with the charge, and thank you, Sam, for doing this with the one change as well. So go ahead. So I was going to go there after we approve the charge. We would put this out for volunteers to step forward, and we would bring people in our meeting on the 13th, because this kind of plays into another one of the items that maybe not that yeah. So we would seat people and bring them in for interviews and seat them on the 13th so they could start their work. I mean, the intent is obviously that the timing objective no later than annual town meeting. So to give them the opportunity to get started and organize. That's my intent. Okay, that being said.
I move to that we approve the noise bylaw ad hoc committee charge as proposed with the single amendment.
Second.
Thank you. Sorry, Mr. Purple, if we could put forth an effort to put a call out for volunteers on this to schedule for that meeting. Thank you very much.
Yeah, we'll get that out tomorrow. We'll try and see if we can do appointments for the 13th.
Okay, great. Thank you. Next up, review and approve new charge for the capital committee. So we had discussed this at our last meeting. One of the things I had talked about with the board was potentially lowering the number to 5 based on some uncertainty, concern with changes that may be taking place with advisory and potential quorum issues they may end up having. My understanding is they are losing 2 members. That's my understanding. So I did speak about it with the board, and one of the things the committee talked about was if we lowered it to 5 to kind of get through fall town meeting and then raising it back up. But another comment was made by another member that, we did have people step forward to serve to fill these positions. So I would recommend, and again, this was based on feedback from last night as well, that we leave this at 7. The only change that they had requested to this is under the second bullet point in the absence. Third line down, projects falling under, instead of oversight, we wanted to change that to collaboration, because that's really what this is. It's collaborating with what's coming after this in our next discussion. It's collaborating with CPC, who has oversight authority, but it's a collaborated effort on trying to work together to provide some help as well. So that was the only change that the capital planning committee requested, was change oversight to collaboration. In respect to CPC. Any comments?
I'm fine with it.
Lisa, where again in the document was the change?
Okay, Andrew, so if you go down under the charge, the
Yes,
second bullet, because one is X'd out, but in the
Yes.
immediate term, in the third sentence, it says in the second bullet, projects falling under the collaboration of this committee will specifically be decided as part of or immediately following any town meeting appropriation or vote of the Board of Selectmen based on a recommendation from the town administrator.
okay.
So that was the only change. And again, it had to do with CPC has oversight of their projects. And we wanted to make sure that, again, the chair had stressed when he went to CPC that this was a collaborative effort.
My only observation is that feels awkward grammatically.
It is.
So it would have maybe accomplishing the same things. Projects falling under the purview of this committee doesn't imply oversight.
Doesn't imply oversight.
Yeah.
That's fine. And
Okay.
I'm sure the capital would be fine.
Okay.
I think we're all trying to accomplish the same thing.
With
So
that amendment, I will move approval of the revised capital planning committee charge.
Membership. No change.
no change.
No change in the membership. Yeah.
Second.
All in favor? Opposed? Oh, and abstain? Okay. Sorry. That takes us to D, review and approve capital planning recommendation for oversight. There was a pretty self-explanatory email from Mr. Malinowski that was in the packet specifying the 3 projects, the townhouse, the fire tender, and the library renovations. There was some discussion about calendar, but recreation wanted to have a discussion on that. So this is what, and I think Jason made clear, CPC was on board with some level of oversight on these projects. So that's what, according to the charge, is the request. Comments?
And so what is it, 9:45? What we are being asked to do is approve those recommendations for oversight of FY '22 capital projects, simply? Okay, I'll move that.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor? All opposed? Okay, that brings us down to F. So, Mark, do you want to discuss number D for special town meeting? Do you want to start that and then, or do you want me to just?
I can start it.
Go ahead.
So I've had some, some internal discussions with the finance team. We've talked about, I think the board's committed to a special town meeting. The discussion has now progressed to when. As you know, we have a pretty aggressive town assessor. Likes to get the tax rate set, sometime in October. Usually likes to come before the board at either your first or second meeting in the month to have the classification hearing. And, I know that people start to come back and, matriculate back into town from the summer, last week in August, first week in September. I think that, probably the sweet spot for the board to consider for a town meeting probably would be that last week of September, first week of October. And I know that, two of the other components to the whole process are the town moderator and the town clerk, and both of them are sharing a bench in the back of the room. So I'm sure that they'll be up next for their thoughts.
Great, thank you. So I did have a brief conversation with Jim. Jim, do you want to? I'm happy to share. Okay, so Jim had reached out to the schools and there is no issue with either of those weeks. The board just has to decide whether we have the ability to set the date, whether we're not bound by a Saturday, we could do a weekday, correct, Mr. Purple? Yeah, so we can set that date. So Mr. Haggerty has spoken to the schools, and again, Jim, you certainly please correct me if I'm wrong, and they have availability for either of those weeks. So the intent of this board, I believe, would, based on the guidelines and everything, be able to have an in-person town meeting inside instead of outside. So one other question that Mr. Haggerty had that we were able to get an answer for was regarding free cash and the certification of that. And Mr. Purple, do you want to? Okay.
No, sure. So, that was one of the concerns you had mentioned to me, Madam Chair, about, whether or not we want to wait to have a town meeting until the free cash is certified. Free cash, usually we close our books sometime, near the end of August, and then we have our free cash certified probably about the second, third week in September. So that would be, we would have that done by the time we get to town meeting. But as the town accountant informed me tonight, it's really a moot point because we shouldn't be looking to spend any of it in the fall. So you have your answer, but you also have your guidance from the town accountant that, we really shouldn't be looking to spend that because we normally don't have these fall meetings. All of that money is waited to be applied at the annual town meeting.
Okay. Thank you. So we do have the moderator here. I don't know, Paul, if you have any thoughts. If you do, if you wouldn't mind coming up to the, so you
Those
can.
weeks are generally good for me. I would prefer to avoid.
I'm sorry, Paul, can you, just for the record, I'm sorry. And I will mute and you can hit the space bar.
Those weeks are the last week of September and the first week of October are generally good. But I would prefer, if possible, to avoid Tuesday the 5th and Wednesday the 6th. But any other weekday or weekend day, it's fine with me.
Thank you. If you wouldn't mind, thank you. Marty, go ahead.
Yeah, do you have a view? I mean, the town voted several years ago to have annual town meeting on Saturday. Should we respect that rationale, do you think? And hold a special town meeting on a Saturday as well? Mr. Haggerty is shaking his head no. I'm just curious as to why.
Because you just took the possible dates from 14 down to 2.
I
Right?
understand that, but it may well be that if we look at those dates, they're not practicable. But why should we focus on that if a Saturday meeting for annual town meeting is the express preference of the town? Why shouldn't that weigh? I'm curious as to why it shouldn't. I don't feel strongly one way or the other right now. I'm just looking for input.
Can I jump in just quickly? I think, Marty, too, one of the things to consider when the voters changed town meeting to the spring, they took into account sports wouldn't be started. And I believe fall soccer, I think you're going to have an issue with sports, high school wise and on down the line if you do a Saturday. So that's just something to consider. But Jim, go ahead.
Right.
So, but to specifically answer why, there isn't a precedent, an implied precedent, annual town meeting is just different than special. And there are things that are always on the docket for annual town meeting that make it a particular set of choices and decisions that the town makes. And a special is for whatever reason you all decide to have a special that may or may not interest nearly as many people in town. So I just don't, in balance, I don't see where the two are equivalent enough to worry about that implied precedent.
And it sounds, Mr. Haggerty, like you agree with that.
Yes, specifically when the citizens petition was brought to move the town meeting to a Saturday, it was brought by people that were trying to find a way to encourage parents of younger children to participate because they didn't have a presence generally at town meetings. So the March dates were chosen because it was sort of the sweet spot between athletic seasons. And so that's out of the mix. So that's all we're sharing.
Lisa?
Go ahead, Sam.
I think the September 27th, 8, and 9 are Jewish holidays. I'm not sure exactly which ones, but we ought to keep an eye on religious holidays as possible conflicts.
On my calendar, the Jewish holidays for September for 2021 are Rosh Hashanah, September 7th, and Yom Kippur, September 16th.
Yeah.
27th.
Is that what you have as well?
Last day of Sukkot. Shimi Azarzet, I don't know how to pronounce that. Simchat Torah. I don't know how major or minor those are, but they show up as Jewish holidays.
Just again, when we set town meeting should not be dictated by Marty Healy's schedule, but just for the odds are pretty good that I will not be back in Massachusetts until the weekend of the first weekend in October. Possible I'll be there earlier, but anyway. So I through October 1 and 2 is really difficult for me.
What day of the week are we looking at?
So we could do the last week in October. I'm sorry, the last week in September or the first week in October. And if we did a evening meeting on, we seem to love to meet on Tuesdays. We could set either an evening meeting on the 4th, 5th. Marty, you'll be back in town for that. Or consider the 4th, 5th, and 6th.
I'll just say he wanted to avoid the.
I'm sorry, correct, 5th and 6th. So we could do the 4th, Monday the 4th, or we could do the 7th.
Again, having blocked out the entire month of September from my schedule, I'll obviously make myself available any of the days that first week of October. I think a Monday would be a
I
better
think so.
Thursday.
That's what I'm thinking as well.
The expectation is that this is a one-night meeting, right?
Right, I mean, we set the course of what we're going to put on it. At this point, we know the downtown initiative is going to be on it.
Yep.
And I think there might be some, as we had talked about, again, I don't know if Board of Health will have something they may have on there, but Andrew, I don't anticipate a full course of a day as we normally do. It would be a much lighter schedule, so.
Okay, the point, Monday. The fourth.
I'm going to abstain from voting on this if there's anything
Oh.
from my other hat.
Got
So
it.
I just don't
Got
want to,
Okay.
I don't want to weigh in.
Okay, so that being said, it seems like we have a general consensus for Monday, the 4th. And
Do we need to pick a time?
7 o'clock, I think that's what we've done in the past. Mr. Hagerty's giving us a thumbs up.
Are you gonna take them?
I'm going to, but I just wanted to verify. Yeah. So do we have a motion to set the date of special town meeting, fall special town meeting for October 4th at 7 PM at do we need to specify where? Trotter Auditorium.
So move.
Second. All in favor? Nay? Abstain. That's good. Okay, so that is set. Next discussion, I'm going to switch the G and H. Mr. Dennington is recusing himself from G, so we will quickly go to H, which is the Shopsy and Capital Planning Committee Affordable Housing Subcommittee. We had touched on this at a prior meeting that to explore, and again, Ms. Jazinski, you're welcome to come up and chime in if you'd like, but basically it's to explore an affordable opportunity as well as a zoning opportunity for South Union School. So this is just creating a subcommittee. It's made up of, so it's 2 parts actually. It's to approve the charge. Andrew Pfaff from the Capital Committee worked with the chair, Ms. Jazinski from Shopsy. Shopsy has approved this charge. Correct. Okay, Shopsy has approved the charge. So that would be the first thing that I would be asking the board to do. And the membership is made up of 5 members. And I think it's pretty self-explanatory unless anybody has any specific questions.
How, if at all, does this relate to the aftermath of the South Union, the bid that we got last time, and no relationship?
It doesn't, other than, I think during that process, the town taxpayers were pretty vocal about, wanting I think the directive was pretty clear, let's say that, to explore this possibility, and that's what we're doing. Just as we had done before, we're exploring a possibility.
So Lisa, are you looking for a motion to approve the Shopsy Capital Planning Committee 21 Highland Street Affordable Housing Subcommittee as proposed?
Correct.
Then that is my motion.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor? All opposed? Okay. Sorry, the second piece to that is the appointment of the committee members. That's in your packet as well. The 2 representatives from Shopsy are Tom Bisful and Alex Frisch. Jesse Stein was appointed, approved last night by Planning Board, and Andrew Pfaff and Joe Palmer were voted on and approved by the Capital Committee to be the representatives. So we just need a vote to appoint those members.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. All right. Thank you. Last item on the agenda is the discussion of council appointments for town special labor. So as the public and the board is aware, the town brought forth 4 candidates from bids for legal. We had the opportunity to interview them at 2 subsequent meetings. The board asked Andrew, and sorry about that, I should have let you leave before I went down this path. I apologize. All right, note that Selectman Dennington has left the room. So again, the board gave a specific list of questions to all of the candidates, and so the discussion tonight is kind of where we stand, kind of see where we're at as far as first thoughts based on the interviews that we had, and again, see where we're at and go from there, and have a discussion and hopefully reach a consensus within the board. So that being said, I am going to start with Selectman Healy on his thoughts on this matter.
All right, thanks, Lisa. I get just very, very quick context, which is we've been talking about this for 2 years now. I think it was first brought up, I think, by Mr. Stivers right after he and I were elected in whenever that was seems like longer than 2019. But anyway, and we tabled it back then because the fiscal year was about to begin, and then last year for an awful lot of obvious reasons we tabled it again, but committed to going through a process this year. What I'm going to do is there are 3 appointees that would be fine with me. And the one that isn't, I think they struck me as terrific lawyers, but the folks in the West Group, they just didn't feel in terms of their experience and the like. It was, to the extent it was in Massachusetts, it was much more city than town, although there were a couple of towns. And an awful lot of their answers, focused on Nassau County in New York and places like that. So I just, particularly given the quality of the other 3, I just didn't see. It was easy for me to applaud them, think they're terrific people and a very good law firm, but I just didn't feel they were a fit for Southborough. Of the other 3, and I don't bury the lead, my favorite is the Tallerman and Mead. Mr. Semino spoke earlier about compelling reason, and Paul, I actually disagree with you on that. No, I know, and we agree to disagree. The reason that I thought this process was important was because of the fiduciary responsibility we have to the town. I think that whether it's every 5 years or some years, the town should go through an exercise like this. And I went into it with a completely, I don't want to say open mind, I'd say kind of a blank mind, because I didn't know who we would get information from. I didn't know who the applicants were. I didn't know how the process was going to play out. During the course of the process, a couple of things really struck me. Number one, I really was affected by the difference, and there is a difference between a solo practitioner and a firm, even if it's a small firm. If you look at, for instance, the Tallerman firm, the number of communities they represent was 15 or 20. A sizable number. And obviously that gives a breadth of experience, a breadth of things that they've addressed. But it also, from a financial standpoint, it gives the ability. I thought one of the most interesting things in the packet, and obviously we asked for writing samples. I thought the most interesting thing were the advisories they sent out to the cities and towns they represent. And when you think about it, one of the reasons they're able to do that is because the cost of doing that is absorbed across 15, 20, some other additional towns. And as a result, that is a service that is provided by, again, a firm that represents that many cities and towns that would be at least incredibly difficult for a smaller firm, a sole practitioner to accomplish. I went through in great detail the legal materials that were submitted by, I'm not going to talk about the West Group now, even though I thought their stuff was very good. But obviously, I've been very impressed by Mr. Cipriano's materials over the years. Was very impressed by the materials produced by the Petrini law firm. I will say the circulars had something to do with it. Again, the breadth of documents that were presented to us by the Tallerman firm, I thought were at least as of high quality as the others. But again, I really was struck by the breadth of what they bring to the table. Let's see, a couple of other things. They're the least expensive. They're the least expensive. I mean, I really liked the option for the fixed cost. And if you look at what the costs have been for the town of Southborough historically, it's not an enormous difference, but it's between $10,000 and $20,000 in what we've paid the last few years. Now, who knows? There could be some exceptional thing, and if we end up going that route, it could end up being more than $84,000. But that fixed amount, I think, is compelling. Also, as part of their bid was the included within it is the attendance at 3 meetings, not necessarily our meetings, but other meetings during the that struck me as obviously something they've developed over the years and representing a number of different communities, and I found that to be an important part of their bid. Let me see, what were the other things? The other and this was true of it's kind of funny when I graduated from law school a while ago, about 20%, 25% of my class was women. And now, 50% of the law school classes are women. I don't think the town of Southborough has ever had a woman represented. And it was very interesting that both for Tallerman and for Petrini, that one of the councils who would be involved in representing the town of Southborough would be a woman. And again, that's not a reason to pick the firm, but it is a it is 2021, and it was nice to see. So across the board, I thought that again, from a financial standpoint, they are the least expensive. I think they provide their bid provided services that are beyond what were represented in the materials by the other firms. Again, their legal quality was at par, at least, with the other 2 firms I've talked about, and I was really struck. I have to assume that it's because of the number of communities that they represent, by the breadth of the materials that they submitted. So that's where I come down. Again, I would be comfortable with all 3, but my first choice is the Tallerman Mead firm. So.
Thank you, Marty. Sam?
Yeah, I agree with a lot of what you have to say, Marty. I think that the West group, again, seemed to me to be not quite local enough, if you will, in terms of familiarity with our world here, and the individuals seem to be more focused on other types of law than sort of broad municipal law. So that just didn't seem to me to be a good fit. Of the others, I actually was interested in and struck by the difference in answers to the questions, in the sense that I was disappointed that in many cases, they didn't seem to answer the questions directly. They talked about things that were sort of related to it, but didn't answer. And I came down, Petrini was number 1 on my list. I thought that Chris Petrini was the most articulate of the people that we heard. And seemed to me that they, again, were focused on municipal law, the kind of things that we run into frequently. I agree with your point that Tallerman had a good breadth in terms of the advisories. I think those are very helpful. But again, in terms of a group that I thought did a better job of focusing on the answers to the questions that we asked, and not sort of veering off into more vague generalities that weren't as much directly on point, is the kind of thing that I'm looking for when I hire an attorney. Is I want somebody who listens and who answers the questions that I ask. I was concerned that Petrini seemed to be more expensive than Tallerman, but they also left the door open to negotiate on price. We asked them about, do you offer a fixed fee approach, and they said they're willing to discuss that. So again, I think that we've got some good choices to make here, and I think that the firm approach to me gives a better breadth of coverage that I think serves the people of Southborough more effectively than the sole practitioner can afford to do, frankly. So again, I think agree that Tallerman is a strong contender, but they were second on my list to Petrini Law.
All right, thank you, Sam. Actually, Chelsea, if you don't mind,
Sure.
I'll go
ahead.
next. Only
Yeah.
because I've been on the board longer, so.
Go for it.
So I had an interesting perspective on this. I was away and I participated by phone because there was no internet where I was at in the Smoky Mountains. So I found it very interesting. There were no distractions or other answers to questions. I felt I specifically didn't go back and watch it in person because I found great value in just the answers to the questions. So I felt some of the answers from all of them were boilerplate and somewhat what I expected them to be. But again, if you're asking firms kind of the same questions, sometimes you do get that. I was looking for somebody to kind of stand out. West, I agree, was not in my top 4. I had Petrini as third on my list, Sam. So, and again, I thought there was a lot of, they made a lot of interesting comments. And when I went back, some of the things they talked about was they had no developer interest, so there was less chance of any crossover. And I appreciated that. I appreciated that they were generally paperless. While clearly they were competent, they just didn't stand out to me with their responses. I actually took less notes based on the conversations with that. So I also felt that the marijuana and the sewer references were not necessarily relevant to here in Southborough. So, well, I appreciated it. And with West, just to touch on that as well, I appreciated a lot of what they said. I had some of the same concerns, Marty, that you expressed of covering multiple states. There's less likely of a local component. And one of the things that was important to me too, as I went through this process was, I think understanding the town is an important factor, and having some level of personability, I guess, and is important. So I, on my list, and I will explain why and why I didn't choose my number 2, because I think as I sit here on the board, it was important to explain that. So on my list for number 2, I actually had the current town council. And why I had him as number 2 on my list, and again, I think it's important because I've sat here longer than anybody on the board. I think that there's a 7 to 10 day window for legal decisions. And I find in a lot of cases, sometimes that can be problematic. I think some of the things that were mentioned by other firms, council has done. Since I've sat on this board, he has done workshops for planning board, conservation, and ZBA. I thought his interview went well. I just thought when I compared the 2, that special counsel does have an understanding of Southborough based on the work that they've done. We've worked with Adam Costa, and I think he's done a remarkable job on the zoning piece. I was rather impressed with, I think it was Kate that they brought with them. I was rather impressed with her. Maybe because he went first, I appreciated the office hours approach. And, you know, coming in, I think it was three hours or whatever a month just to catch up and see what's going on. I like the availability and the team approach. And I appreciated the benefit of offering a less formal opinion if needed, and to ask on the front side why it was needed to determine what path, speed, and need are sometimes a priority. And I liked, again, unlimited access to council with up to 3 meetings per week, for a month, I'm sorry. So it was really tough because I think council has done a very good job, you know, in the time he's been here. I think, again, I talked about having a little bit of a personal, that piece being important to me, but I think sometimes too, when somebody has been in a position a long time, I think sometimes the lines get blurred between taxpayer and consultant counsel, however you want to say it. And I can just say that in the last few weeks, and I know town council has had a lot going on during that time, but I've been concerned with the tenor of some of the emails that have came across. And so those are some of the things that went into my consideration. I think certainly town council is more than qualified. He's been here a long time. But I think when it comes down to one path, I think Tellerman has a lot of opportunities that I think we could make use of. And again, the cost as well came into play. So I will leave it at that. Chelsea?
Thank you. So I fell out a little bit differently. So I actually had Patrini as my fourth pick. And the reason for that was I didn't personally feel that they knew Southborough well enough for me to have a comfort level that they were going to be able to come in and do what we needed to have done. Wes was my third. I had similar concerns, so I'm not going to repeat them. And so then I was between Tellerman and Cipriano. So what I did was I re-listened to both interviews and I kind of created a grid for myself. And, you know, some questions I thought were answered better by one versus the other and kind of back and forth. I do have a lot of respect for Attorney Cipriano, and I think he's served the town well for the amount of time that he's been here. So I didn't want to take away from kind of the successes that he's had here. So I think what it came down for me is I like the flat fee proposal. I like that the deadlines are driven by the town. So, you know, we have an issue, we need to hear by, you know, we understand it's a tight timeline, we need to hear in 3 days. You know, I think there's that option. I also like the office hours. I like the breadth of their education options. I don't think that they talked about that specifically in the interview, but it was in the RFP. And then on the Aldo side, I know that he provides a quarterly report to the town. So it's not as often as what we would get from Tellerman, but I do recognize that he does provide that. I think that he's done a nice job, at least while I've been on the board, with tax title issues that we've had, and also dealing with Stockwell with getting that piece of real estate off. So I think, and one comment that I'll just piggyback on Marty's point with the kind of the news flash or updates that, you know, it sounds that we got examples of. I look back to my first quarterly meeting with Attorney Cipriano, and I had requested an update to the COVID response from a council perspective, and he provided it, but we were charged for it, and I guess I was a little taken back that this just didn't already exist. But I was like, okay, so I guess this is how it works. I mean, obviously I was new to the board. So now that I have seen Tellerman's examples of that, I'm like, oh, it does exist. I think this is one of the benefits that we would get from going with a firm that has a lot of other municipalities in it. So for me, I think it came down to the timing of being able to provide responses, the information that we would be able to get because they've serviced more towns, the still having the individual relationship because they're not as big as other firms like West. So I toyed back and forth with the idea with Tellerman versus Cipriano, but Tellerman came out as my number one.
All right, thank you. I just want to add one thing, Chelsea, and I'm
Sure.
glad you brought up Stockwell. I had it down. I wanted to mention how much I did appreciate all of town council's guidance and support through the Stockwell process. As a layperson coming in and not understanding, I think he gave some amazing guidance, and I tremendously appreciate that. And I think I said that in the Affordable Housing Trust meetings as well. It was very instrumental in getting everything done and getting the house on the market quickly. So I was remiss. So thank you, Chelsea, for mentioning that. So, Mr. Stivers,
As I said, Tom was number 2 on my list. I can live with that, so I support that.
Is that your motion? It's kind of awkward.
I'll let you make the motion.
Okay, I will move that the town of Southborough appoint as town council for fiscal year 22, beginning July 1. The firm of Tellerman and Mead under their proposed fee structure A, which is a fixed fee of $84,000 per annum.
is there a second? Second. All in favor? All opposed? Nay. All right, thank you. And thank you to, again, to town council for all of his service over the many years. And again, it was just came down to a few core things. So, Mr. Purple.
So I think with the decision the board has made this evening, that kind of takes off the table any need to appoint special counsel. Because you obviously have, it's up to the board whether you'd want to go down that road, but whether you feel you need to appoint special counsel. The other issue is, are you appointing labor counsel tonight too? Mr. Helios.
I think what we should do is, again, this goes to the breadth of Tellerman. I think we need to do on July 13th is to have Tellerman in and find out what they can cover. We may not need any special counsels at all anymore. In other words, the Tellerman firm might be able to cover what we've had special counsels for in the past. And let's find out on July 13th. Does that make sense?
So, sorry. So my question to you, Mark, would be, so for labor counsel, his contract would expire on June 30th. And I know there's some things he's working on now. So that's my only concern on the time frame, Marty. And I believe there's requests coming.
How is the contract written, Mark? Is it a simple letter agreement?
It's a simple one-year appointment.
It's a one-year appointment. But it's the way it's conveyed again, it's a simple letter agreement. It's not something, it doesn't have a whole lot of detail like we do with a department head, for instance, or something like that. I'm trying to remember back. I haven't seen it in a while. Again, can we make interim a 3-month appointment?
Extend for 90 days or something.
Yeah, why don't we, I move that we do that for labor council.
Is there a second?
Second.
Sorry, Sam, I cut you off. All in favor? Okay.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
On current litigation or current issues that's outstanding, how do we handle that?
Yeah, sure.
I think that is something, again, my recommendation is that that's something we talk to Tellerman about on the 13th. And I mean, he's a professional. Mr. Cipriano is a professional. Clients change hands all the time in the legal community. They will communicate between now and the 13th, and presumably Mr. Tellerman will have a proposal for us how to deal with that. There may be some litigation, for instance, where it makes sense just because of the immersion and the status of the litigation for Mr. Cipriano to stay involved. Others, if it's early enough, I suspect that Mr. Challoner will say it's not that complicated for him to step in. But I again, happens all the time. I'm comfortable listening to his recommendation about that.
And the two of them have worked effectively together in the past as well, so it's not strangers.
Good point, Sam. Okay, Mr. Purple, do you have what you need?
Is there a vote on labor? Was that?
Apologize. Okay, that being said, public comment. All right, Mr. List, I'm passing. I know you're here. So that being said, do we have a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor? Thank you. Good night, everyone.